As I see the number of participants change, I will add the attendance link again. I like to start with just a quote. This one was from the Right to Read project. And I just think it's really pertinent. I'll put the link in the chat box for us to today's topic, that really, yeah, there are a lot of ways to figure out what a word is, but there's really only one way to read it. So I think that there's a difference between reading a word and understanding it, and those can be two different processes. So welcome everyone. I'm just going to make sure that I have closed captions on. We're recording. Good morning, Jana. I will do a quick poll to see if there's anybody who's never had any classes with us. And let's see, I do have a background knowledge poll. That one's about dyslexia, so I'll just do a new one for us today instead. Is there anybody who's never been with us, anyone newly with us today? So I'll give you a moment with that. We do have some. Perfect. I will end the poll. All I know is it needs some so that I can be respectful of everyone. So I'll stop that there. We're going to jump into some of the other introductory pieces. We always start in my agency with a land acknowledgement, recognizing that our region is on the lands that are forcibly removed from the Nisqually, Cowlitz, Puget Sound Salish, Quinault, Shoalwater, Chehalis, and Squaxin Island people. We cover 5 counties. But I also encourage everyone, if you know where you are, to put it into the chat box. And I also appreciate one of my colleagues at another ESD had talked about and had a slide on the fact that acknowledgements are but a first step. They don't stand in for authentic relationships and connections, but it can be a place to begin drawing awareness to the work that needs to be done toward decolonizing relationships with people in place. And it's kind of giving thanks and recognizing, especially, and I think it's something to think about right now in this month. Whoops, that reminds me, I still have my background on, so I'll take that off because I talk with my hands, is recognizing the pain and trauma and from over 400 years of racism in the United States, and pledging to stand with our communities of color, especially those who identify as and or categorized as African American, and also recognizing and acknowledging the intersectionality of those who identify both as persons of color and individuals with disabilities. I do have a Black Lives Matter at School link that I'm going to put in the chat box. Thank you, Kevin, for putting where you are. And I also this morning was sharing a recording. Let's see. Oh, I didn't put it in there. I was putting it on as people were starting in, but I didn't put it into the link. So let me just go right here and grab it because I still have it up. Is Laderick Horn's series on
Hi, I'm Laderick.
Black history and people with disabilities. Laderick Horn is a poet with dyslexia, and one I highly encourage exploring his work. If you haven't seen some of his videos, this Until Every Barrier Falls is one of my favorites, as well as the Dare to Dream. So I'll put those in as well for a bit of sharing as we start off. Okay, and feel free to share things also in resources I love to learn from as well as with people. So let's keep things coming. We do have some Zoom tips, a reminder. So as we work together, we do ask that you, oops, I'm not on that screen anymore, sorry. Here we go. We ask that you rename yourself so that to include your district or your region. This gives us some context when you share. So to do this, you're going to find the participant list and you'll find your name. And next to it, you see that more button, and that's where you can find the rename option. Alternatively, you can hover over your picture and a blue box will pop up. And when a blue box with 3 white dots, when you click that, it renames an option there, as well as hide the self view. So we ask that you have your video on as much as possible, but we understand if you've got life going on or context or people or connectivity issues. It's just helpful for me to have the nonverbal feedback. So thank you, Melissa, but if you need to have it off, I get it. It's just appreciated. It makes us more of a connected group and classroom. The muting when not talking is only if there are background noises. If there's not, feel free to leave it off. It can be more of conversational. And there's your mute button for unmuting and to just contribute at any time. I do have indications here for you to help know where the raise hand option is. It's not intuitive. It's under the reactions. Because unless you are Rebecca, Jana, Melissa, or Dahlia, I can't see you. I can only see a few at a time. And I can make my thing a little bit bigger, but then people don't have videos on. So there we go. So hence, please just use the electronic hand raise, or like I said, put something into the chat box or just unmute. Great. Thank you, Gina. I appreciate it. Okay, and then we will have opportunities to write on the screen and to explore and to actually do stuff. And so to do that, you'll be clicking on the view options up at the top next to where it says you're viewing my screen. And when you click that, annotation is one of the options. It has a little pencil next to it. And when you click that annotate button, you get this toolbar. And this little red dot is where you can change the color of whatever you're drawing or writing with. And up here is where you'll find the stamps. So it looks like a check, but if you click on it, you have other options, an arrow, an X, a star, a heart, and a question mark. So ways to engage and join in as with engagement. Please, let's be active, engaging. So speaking of, I actually have active engagement here. And the third item, we also start with the teaching and learning beliefs of my agency. And at this point, I'd like to just take a pause and invite you to engage by stamping or putting in the chat something from this list that speaks to you today, something that you connect with, that you appreciate, or if there's something that you think we're missing. Oh, thank you, Kevin, for adding a list of African American artists we should know. I'll add that to my list for next time. We have in the chat box the building relationships piece. A couple of them. Data-driven. That's a keyword as well. This building relationships one used to say building relationships with students. And while I don't want to discount that, I also want to emphasize these relationships. The relationships we have with others in the school building, the relationships we have with the families of our students, the relationships we have with the community. I mean, everything we need to do, we are stronger together. And so we can't get together once we have that building relationships piece. And then for me, I think it's really this piece down at the bottom as well, this big word of all. That I've had some educators ask me, particularly secondary, when do we stop teaching our kids to learn to read and we teach them accommodations? And my reaction is always, number one, never. But number two, why do we need to? Why can't we continue? Why can't we do both? And I know that there is only so much time, but I've had kids when I taught high school, and the teachers told them, or the psychologist, or they were told they can't. Their reaction was, "I'm going to prove you wrong." So you never know how hard someone's going to work. All right, I'm going to clear all that off. Nope, thanks, Gina, for one more addition. I'll give you another moment if there's anybody else who wants to join in. All right, I'm going to clear that off then and invite you again to contribute to how we work together. So some people call these norms. I've got a little bit of an odd font there. The non-judgment zone, sometimes I have it as listen without judgment, or listen openly and share openly with speak your truth. Most of these came from the Center for Ethical Leadership, although I think I added the give yourselves and each other grace. So these are some requests on how we work together today. And because I'm sure that we have a heterogeneous group, though I haven't had a chance to survey everyone, I know that we come from various different backgrounds and needs. And so that's, I think, why I find the bottom one the most important. But I'll open it up to your thoughts. Another appreciation for the grace. Nobody ever puts into the chat that I'm missing anything, so but I'm always open if there's anything that people would like to add. I do appreciate that. Kevin, it's been a funky school year, isn't it? I mean, I think that we keep thinking that things are better and people are back in the swing of things, and yet at the same time, I think that we're getting sick more. At least I am. It's like, can we please go back to masks and stay healthy? I don't know. Melissa asks about the expect and expect non-closure. Yeah, I love that connection, Melissa, to that we won't always figure it all out. Yes, we're always learning. That connects to the growth mindset on that last slide. And the grace is that we are imperfect. And I think that that's one of the important things we want our kids to know, is that we're not perfect. So not to beat themselves up when they make mistakes, and to recognize that the learning path is not a straight trajectory line. It's sometimes it's messy, and you go back and forth, and to be patient with ourselves, that we are always learning. Yes, thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that. Oh, Kevin, I'm so sorry. Oh, phew. I have a friend whose middle school son lost his homeroom teacher last week. So it's life can be hard sometimes. So I hope that everyone takes a deep breath and gives ourselves and each other grace, because life, right? Okay, well, let's jump in. We've got a lot to do. I do have some guideposts. This keeps growing. I apologize if it looks overwhelming. But I will be honest, I have not infused all these in, especially the equity connections. But I'm trying to be more explicit. This came from one, this was a strategy. I think they only had about 4 of them, that Learning Ally had me use when I created some slide decks for them. And in one session, once people a half hour in said, there wasn't anything practical. I thought there was everything practical. So I'm realizing I need to be more explicit. So this is something I'm trying to infuse in, and I do look to everyone who works with me to help. If there's something that you see, oh, here's an opportunity, or here's something you missed, please let me know. Put it in the chat box, or unmute, or send me an email. I'm happy to try to make sure that I'm more and more explicit. And as I always say, when we know better, we do better. So there will be handouts that you can take away, meaning that you can print up and share. Those are, so I have a whole folder of printable handouts I'll share with you. Activities will be opportunities to engage, put into the chat box, put into right on the screen, or go into a chat board room to do something. The time to reflect is usually built into a discussion time. So if you prefer to have a quiet reflecting time, you can stay out of your discussion. I'll make the rooms a little bit larger so that I want to make sure people can talk to others if they want to. A practical strategy is something that you can walk away with, and something you can do with your kids. And in this case, the practical strategy, there are a couple of them. Number one, these guideposts throughout are helpful reminders, but also having a nonverbal icon so they don't have to do the reading. As far as I used to have sometimes a little square that said handout. Well, now I've got an icon that has that instead. And electronic resources will be things that you can, they hopefully are all on my electronic resource that you got in the email. And if they aren't there, please let me know and I will make sure to add them and fix those. And then equity connection is a new one, because it's something I want to try infusing into everything I do, because I think that, literacy is a civil right, or should be, and it is about, I think it was Ennius Cosby who was learning to become a teacher at the same time as Kareem Weaver, who was with the NAACP in Oakland, and part of the movie, The Right to Read. If you haven't seen that, I definitely encourage you to find a screening of The Right to Read, although there is a free one that you can see. So The Right to Read, I think you can find information about it online as far as the preview. So it's definitely one I recommend. Oh, that might have a watch the film now. No, just screenings. You can request a screening, you can watch a trailer, but I'll put that in the chat box for you. But there is a free one that I think is also powerful, and it's called Blame It on Gutenberg. The Blame It on Gutenberg is not as much of a racial call for justice, but whoops, see, I'm typing racial. Blame It on Gutenberg. There it is about the need to support our students with dyslexia and help make sure that everyone can read. So hence, that's the equity piece that I want to draw attention to is the need for literacy for all. Okay, so today's goals, these are the long texts. I tried to draw out some words with highlighting. And you will be able to go into breakout rooms soon to talk about what your goals are today and to kind of do some pre-thoughts. But we'll be talking about syllable types, so how we focus on syllables to help students learn words, dividing words into syllables, looking at some historic and linguistic explanations for how syllables are spelled, and different approaches for teaching syllabification in a way that is systematic, cumulative, explicit, and diagnostic. Now, I know when I asked the survey that some of you have never taken any classes with me before, so I do try and make these standalone enough. And yet at the same time, we're not going to be going in depth into some of the previous topics that we've done in my series. And in fact, if you don't know what I'm talking about with this series, I'll pull up the on the About Dyslexia page. You will see here under professional learning, 2 to 3 different opportunities. There are some webinars that are recorded that everyone can have access to. This bundle will take you to asynchronous courses that are free, available for our state, at least until June. I'm not sure about after. I keep pushing and hoping so. I do want to say that for understanding dyslexia, there's this short 2-hour one, and then there's this longer, I can't tell if that says 3 or 5 hours, that it says for school psychologists, anyone can take it, and it just goes deeper into dyslexia. I definitely encourage that one as well. But the other classes of mine, if you are interested in seeing what else we've done or share on and see what's coming, I'll put this into the chat box. And it is the whole series of classes that I do. They took off everything before November, but we started with handwriting, and then we went into phonology, sound symbol correspondences, syllabification, morphology, syntax, fluency, etc. So I'll grab that and put it into the chat box too for you. Thanks, Kevin, for the idea, but we all keep trying. Okay, so that's where we're going. That's where we've been. And this is what we're focusing on today is when we talk about definitions, we're also going to understand dyslexia, because that's a large part of what I do. And my theory is if you can teach someone with dyslexia to read, you can teach anyone to read. It's really the word reading part of where it's difficult. So we're going to focus on some definitions of syllables and their role in literacy development, including for those with dyslexia. We'll talk about syllable types, the ways to divide words, look at historical influences, looking at assessing and teaching, and how this fits into a comprehensive literacy lesson. So before we start, though, I do want to have a caveat. Good morning, Lisa and Dahlia and Gina. This were the times that were scheduled from 8:30 to 4, but I always like to give groups the option of having an entire hour for lunch and finish at 4 o'clock, or having a half-hour lunch and finishing at 3:30. So if there's anyone who has a strong preference either way, put it into the chat. If you can't do a shift or one of the others, please put it into the chat. I do record it. Looks like everyone is saying half hour, and 3:30 is a preference. Okay, so in that case, if you want to take a screenshot of this will be our schedule today. We have 4 90-minute chunks, and instead of a full hour, we'll have a half hour for lunch with 2 other 15-minute breaks. for you to regroup, take care of your needs. I don't think people should be standing at Zoom or sitting at Zoom for that long, for longer than that. So if you want to just take a screenshot or take a note, we'll be taking breaks at 10 o'clock, 11:45 for lunch, and another break at 1:45 to 2. Okay. Just checking the chat box, giving you everyone a moment. All right, so we're going to do some brief introductions, and there will be an opportunity. I'll go back to this slide, but I want to give you the opportunity to do some introduction pieces in them as well. So I have a Jamboard that we're going to put into the chat box where you can say, put on the map where you're from. And I also have a Mentimeter that I can pull up so we can see what everyone's role is. So the Jamboard, whoops, I put in the whole thing. Let me try it again. I could always add more things to do, but right now we have 16 slides. The first slide is a parking lot. It looks kind of like that outside. It's not raining, but it is definitely foggy for questions or thoughts. And then the third frame is for where you are joining from. If you've never used Jamboard, you have, it looks like Kim has, you add in the sticky note piece here and you can say where you are. And if you have cancel, then you can grab it, resize it. As you can say, Kim's making hers. Whoops. Somebody made that. I don't know if I did that. Uh-oh. Let's see if I can delete that. There we go. We'll try that again. And I'm in the Olympia area. So I'm going to grab mine, resize it small and put it there. So, oh, Melissa, I'm going to be heading in to Pasco. I'm not sure if I've set the date yet. Thank you, Rebecca. No problem. Okay. So we're, and then of course we'll have some other opportunities and engagement as well. So this is where we're starting. Fun to see where everyone is from. And I have a Mentimeter with when it comes to what is our role. So it's been a while since I've done the Mentimeter, so I'm going to put that up for us. And I have a link into the chat box. So you can either use a device, go onto your website, and here is the link where you can put on what your role is. And in the meantime, I'm going to introduce myself. We had some people who said that they were new to my classes. So for those of you who aren't new, I apologize if you're getting a little repetition, but I'd like to give everyone some context. So notice you've got a couple of influences, a few things here that drive me. That I didn't make this pretty my past, my family, my community, our communications people did, but they used images that I use. And so the Chartwell is where I began my career after thinking I was going to be a high school English teacher, because that was how being prepared to be a high school English teacher. But then being prepared to be an ESL teacher, I got a job at a school in California for kids with learning disabilities, particularly dyslexia. And the reason why they named that place Chartwell was because Winston Churchill, who had learning disabilities and struggled and allegedly had dyslexia, was once asked, Mr. Churchill, you've been all over the world. Where's your favorite place? And without missing a beat, he said Chartwell, which was the name of his ancestral home. And when asked why, he said, because it's the one place I can truly be myself. And that was something I really appreciated about Chartwell. And it really instilled in me a recognition of, I mean, additionally with the training they gave me and how to teach kids with dyslexia, but the need to have a place where kids feel okay, they can be themselves and they can, and they're not being beat up. They know that they're not alone. And that's so crucial. So in the meantime, so I started there in 2001. And in 2011, my daughter was born. She's the one in the middle there. And in the meantime, I had learned about the heritability of dyslexia and that it's in my own family. So I watched both my children as a hawk. So while I started as professionally, my journey became personal with her. And I've been now on both sides of the IEP table. I've been both sides of the 504 table. So I have both the teacher, the parent perspective. I've also been a professor of special education, teaching people to become teachers. But of course, the most important is as well is the community. Remember, I said we need those to work together. We need to build the relationships. We need to support each other. And so that's the community piece that you see there on the right, as well as a couple of organizations I've been working with, the International Dyslexia Association and Decoding Dyslexia. I see Dahlia's put in that she's a virtual tutor. That's fantastic. Dahlia, I'm always having people ask for where they can find tutors. So I hope that you are on the WABITA website. And if you're not, send me an email, because like I said, people are always looking for tutors. And let's see what else has come up. Oh, fantastic. Thank you for engaging. I love that we have a substitute. History, fantastic. First grade. First grade should come with the warning label, don't you all think? At least that's when my daughter hit her wall. I know people hit individuals with dyslexia hit their walls at various different teachers. I mean, different places. I'm reading it and saying it. Whether it be first grade, third or fourth, when you start having fewer pictures, middle school, high school, even adulthood. For my daughter, it was first grade. And I'm glad you love it, but oof, I mean, the warning label for the kids. I mean, it's funny because my son, who has autism, reading and writing were very easy for him, phonemic awareness and phonics. But in first grade, he said, Mom, I can't read. Because he was comparing himself to how fluently we read. And I said, honey, you're sounding the words out. You are reading. But his definition of reading wasn't that. And then, of course, his sister, it was headaches and stomach aches and coming home early and crying on Sunday night before school. So first grade can be very, very tough. That's what I think a lot of the kids will recognize. I'm not doing what my peers are doing. All right. Well, we don't have everyone in here, but we do have a sampling. Hopefully everyone will get a chance to add in your contribution. And I do want to add in, when we're talking about that first grade, though, when my daughter did discover that, she said, Mom, can we find a video to send to my best friend, so that she understands why I'm not watching or not reading the same kinds of chapter books as she is. Thank you, Kimberly. So we found this video, my favorite kid-friendly video. And if you have kids who are struggling, I highly, highly encourage you, regardless of the age. It's so powerful and simple and good for the kids. We actually showed it to our second grade class. We brought it in. It's very short, I think maybe 4 to 6 minutes. Let's see if we can have a number of minutes on.
Your brain is amazing.
You can see it starts off with that message. About 3 minutes. And those first words, your brain is amazing, and everybody's brain is different, and it's just very empowering. So I appreciate that. Oh, great. We've got a few more. We'll keep those coming. As well as where things are. Thank you, Charlene, for putting on in that Far East, contributing that way. Thank you, everybody, for joining in and letting us know where you're joining from. Like I said, I will be going out to other ESDs in person, but little by little, we'll be working on that. Okay, that's the relationship building. That's how we get to know each other. And I will give you in a moment to do some assessing. I'd like to start with priming our brains and thinking about the topics. And so we're going to think about what we know and what we won't know. So I'm going to put that Jamboard in. Oh, it looks like I think everybody's in the Jamboard, but just in case, here it is again. And I'm going to make small breakout rooms because we have a small group. And I want you to think about your current knowledge or your comfort with teaching syllabification and more advanced orthography, meaning more advanced sound symbol connections and the advanced phonics. And I want you to kind of talk about it with your group and have somebody post either a question that your group would like to have answered, or a wondering, or a thought that you just want to bring to the group. So those, I think I made it frame 4. Let's see. Yes, frame 4 for questions or thoughts on that. So if you want to put them on frame 4 or to the parking lot, that we can do either one of those. That's totally fine. We have some other activities later on. Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording and make our breakout rooms. I'm going to resume recording. What is happening in terms of handwriting? That is a good question for us to be thinking about throughout the day. Looks like somebody else said, yep, cursive as well. That one goes along with as well. Fantastic. Thank you. So some things that we'll be coming back to throughout the day. Thank you. And feel free to continue adding to that, as well as the parking lot. But as we get started, I want to start with the concept of orthography is a fantastic place to start, because as we start with a framework of some definitions, I start with the frameworks on which this series is built. So on the left, this is from Margie Gillis from Literacy How, and I'll grab these links and put them into the chat box for you. Copy link address. This is where I'm trying to talk and work at the same time. So Literacy How, Margie took the National Reading Panel 5, if you remember the big 5, phonemic awareness, alphabetic principle, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, and she put them around oral language, because that's really where we start with speaking, with learning to read and write. We have to start from speaking and being able to speak and hear. Somebody once had a adjustment request when I mentioned that need for oral language and how it's so, our reading and writing skills are dependent upon our oral language, and asked that I be a little bit more inclusive, thinking about people who are deaf. Well, because they don't have oral language, it is a lot harder for them. And oral language is the basis of our reading and writing. You'll notice too, though, that she's made a few shifts. So the alphabetic principle she's clarified as phonics and spelling. And then the fluency, the orange one used to be fluency. And she realized through her work teaching teachers and working with students that syntax is really the key to fluency. It's really when we start thinking about going from word by word reading to phrases in order to achieve prosody. And knowing how those phrases work is really the realm of syntax, and understanding how words work together in groups. So that's one of the influences. And then the other one is from the International Dyslexia Association. This is their older version of their wheel, and I haven't incorporated their new one in. But nonetheless, this was the framework for what the courses that I do, and really based on the work of Louisa Moats and this fantastic book. This is the 3rd edition. The other ones are great too. But every time she gets a lot more in depth and thorough. I'm surprised it doesn't keep getting thicker. But each chapter, she has a whole chapter on phonology, or a couple of them actually. One on orthography, and that's where she talks about sound symbol connections and syllables. And so IDA broke them apart, and I did for these series. I'm actually putting them back together for a new series I'm doing for OSPI, because this is orthography. Ortho has to do with the correct, and graph has to do with written. So let me get my little writing tool here. So when we're talking about orthography, we're talking about the written form of language. And here's the oral form, phonology, that's the sounds. The written form is, how do I represent those sounds by the symbols? And then how does that, the syllables affect how they're written and pronounced? And then morphology has to do with meaning, as does semantics, but there's a bit of a different nuance. Morphemes are those pieces that we put together to make words, and then semantics are what they mean. And we can talk about lexical semantics, which are the individual words, and sentential semantics, the larger units of sentences and beyond. And then we had already mentioned the syntax being how those words work together in teams and groups, and as phrases and clauses and such. So that's the framework for where we start, and where we are today is on the syllables piece. But I also like to make sure I frame this into the bigger picture of reading. When we think about the simple view of reading, that's the equation we see on the right. And reminder, if this is your first time seeing the simple equation, I do want to draw attention to that multiplication symbol, that remember that we need both the language comprehension and the word recognition in order to independently read and understand text. The independent reading and actually translating what those squiggles and lines are is my word reading piece. And the language comprehension is being able to understand it once I have. A great example I heard recently of this, it was a German man who had lost his ability to see very well. So he couldn't read the text himself. And his grandchild didn't understand German, but could pronounce it. And so read to his grandfather. So the question is, who's reading? The young man was doing the word recognition and the grandfather was doing the language comprehension. So those are two important pieces that they needed each other to complete each other to really have that language comprehension piece. So I thought that was an interesting example. We are focusing today here in the decoding piece. And why? Because it builds to my ability to recognize words seemingly on sight. I really want to kind of take this and put these in quotations, because I feel like the word sight recognition is too often misunderstood in that for input, and people think you need to look at it and memorize it. And while we do need visual input in order to read, we remember words through our phonological memory, not our visual memory. This is why words, we can see very small differences and not have a problem. And this is why that it's not bigger words versus small words. There really isn't a difference. Our kids with dyslexia really often struggle with some of the smaller words, prepositions, because phonemes are really crucial, and that connection between the phonemes and the meaning. Here's our vocabulary here. So there are some pieces that need to be connected way more than visual. So I want to say that the sight word means every word aspires to us to be able to recognize it automatically. That sight word, I can see it and I can read it. So automatic recognition is really our goal. One thing I want to add, though, about this simple view of reading, and I'm just going to pause here for a moment. Is there anyone for whom this is new? Any thoughts anyone wants to add in about this reading rope, which I think by now has become a pretty common framework for representing the complexity of reading? Melissa asks about the vision therapy. So like I said, the visual input is crucial, but even the American Association of Pediatrics, I think APA, American Pediatric Association, has come out with statements about the fact that vision problems don't cause learning disabilities. Despite I went to a conference once where there was a vision therapy doctor who thought she would be able to convince me by the end of her session that vision problems cause learning disabilities. And I said, no, they don't. Vision is extremely important. And there is an element of dyslexia that is called visual crowding. And that visual therapy may help with that. But dyslexia is a phonological connection. The visual crowding, I have that piece. I always thought dyslexia missed me because I learned to read and write really easily. And so I wondered, is it ADHD that has the visual crowding, or is it the dyslexia? Who knows? But there are very close parts in the brain that are making these connections. But what I mean by visual crowding is that very often, as you saw me, you heard note earlier when I was talking about something else, I noticed the word teacher, and that slid into my speech because I'm noticing everything. And this is very common with the visual crowding, where if you're reading, say you're reading this word here and you notice this word, and so that C might slip into that word, even though it's not there in that word, because you're looking at something ahead. And with my students, when I could tell that they were having problems with visual crowding, I would just get a 3x5 card and cut out a little window to put it over their text so they're only seeing a little bit at a time. So that was or strategy, or I've seen even people make bookmarks like that. The Microsoft product OneNote will darken everything except for one line, and so that's a strategy you can do as well. So I think they go to vision therapy because they're trying. You know, they're trying one more thing to rule out. And that's something that when we do in special education, we rule out, can the child see, can the child hear? We want to make sure that we rule out those other factors as something else to try. But yes, I mean, could it be accurate to say we need our eyes? Yes. It is very necessary to be able to see and hear in order to learn to read and write. However, we need to remember that it is not a visual memory process, it's an auditory memory process. So we do need it for the input, but once it's input, we need to make sure it's connected to the sounds. And so that's really the key piece. And that comes back to the orthography, that we are connecting the sounds that we know to the symbols we see, and or the sounds that we say to the symbols we write. And so that begins the writing piece as well. All right, so another thing to think about with that simple view of reading is that it's not static within a student. And so I'm going to illustrate this with a couple of kids. That this first kid, he speaks English as a native language. He comes to school with a lot of words that he uses and can understand. He's got that strong language comprehension, that's the red. He's gained the ability to sound out words through his sound symbol knowledge, that's the blue. So his reading comprehension is strong. But if we gave that same kid, who can sound out pretty much any word that he sees, a book that has words he doesn't know or grammatical structures he's never encountered, he's going to struggle to understand that text. Or if you give me a book on protein kinases or engineering, I'm going to struggle to understand that text because I don't have the language comprehension to understand that. So that's on if our kids, and again, that's a relationship between the reader and the text. What's not the right word? Alternatively, if I have a kid, like a kid with dyslexia, who has strong language comprehension, if you said things to them, if you have a conversation, they are with you, but they struggle in getting the words off the page. So that's our kids with dyslexia. They're going to struggle understanding the text. Like think about the German man and his grandson example that I gave. So one thing that we can do though to help them is to give them an auditory text so that they are getting it through their ears as well as their eyes, and that's going to be supporting their reading comprehension. So note that benefit of that audio text to really support the student's understanding. And this is what it looks like. I'm going to take all of this, put it all up for us, is notice that the kid at the top, he was our typical skilled reader, that he's in the purple. He's strong in his language comprehension, he's strong in his word reading. But remember when I said if you can teach someone with dyslexia to read, you can teach anyone, because it's our dyslexic students who are building their word reading skills, and that's where their weakness is in word reading. But notice I'm going to still have to continue to work on their language comprehension, just like everyone. Language comprehension skills are something we're going to be working on for the rest of our lives. I'm always going to be learning more words, learning more grammatical constructions, learning more about language and how it works. So that's something that we can continue to be learning more background knowledge to contribute to my understanding of language. And that's why I added on the emerging reading piece here, is because when our kids come to school, they need both. You need to be developing both your ability to understand words people say to you and then to get them off the page. So I'm going to pause for a moment on this because there's a lot here, and especially for people who have never seen this before, to just kind of process the different kinds of strengths and struggles that we see in our readers. Now, I will say this doesn't tell you why the struggles exist, just that the struggles are there. Somebody was asking earlier about screenings. The screenings don't tell you why, they just say that there is a struggle and something we need to attend to and work on. So it may be dyslexia, it may be that English isn't your first language, you haven't been exposed to these sound symbol correspondences, this is new for you. It simply says that this is an area we need to address. Oh, Oh, Melissa, you're asking a big question there. Language comprehension, I've seen a lot more chatter recently in the past few years than previously, because it's a lot harder. Very often the kids who struggle with language comprehension would be categorized as DLD, trying to remember the language disability, it's not a learning disability, but a language disability versus the word reading. And that's harder. I think, what's her name? I will take a look for when you're in breakout rooms next. I will look for some resources for that. And I know there's a researcher who's spending a lot of attention on that, but that's a much harder piece. And because it's so contextualized, and it's so dialectical, and it's so influenced by culture and how much you've learned so far. So that's one of the reasons why I added to that emerging reader, is that there's always more all of us can learn. How much have we learned? Have we learned enough yet to understand the context? I mean, if you're reading Charlotte's Web and you've never been to a farm, you're going to need a lot of language work on that. And yes, with you add on about multilingual learners, and that language comprehension is something that we need to build and have experiential. And that's when we talk about semantics, we'll be talking a lot more about building background knowledge and all those pieces that we need to do with that. We're going to go a little bit more into dyslexia now at the moment, though, because that is really a framework of everything that I do. And it's something that I want to make sure a lot of this work is funded through the OSPI work on dyslexia. So I'm just going to take a moment with the definition. I'm going to ask if there is a volunteer who would like to give my voice a break. And I will put in the chat box for you a fact sheet. And I will also encourage people, after our reader has read sentences, to highlight, stamp, or otherwise draw attention to words or phrases that stand out to you. As you can see, I've made way too many blue, but things that stood out to me, but I invite you to interact as well with this. So is there anyone who would like to read this for us?
Sure, I'll read it.
Thank you, Kevin. Go ahead.
Okay, I just got to move my chat box here. Definitions of dyslexia. Dyslexia means a specific learning disorder that is neurological in origin and that is characterized by unexpected difficulties with accurate or fluent word recognition and poor spelling and decoding abilities that are not consistent with the person's intelligence, motivation, and sensory capabilities. These difficulties typically result from the deficit in phonological components of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities. In addition, these difficulties are not typically a result of ineffective classroom instruction. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge.
Thank you, Kevin. We appreciate that. So I haven't seen anybody. Oops, I thought I did have someone must have I don't know how I erased that. I don't see any annotations. Is there anything anyone would like to draw attention to on this before we move on? Any surprises, any thoughts, any words that you would like to talk about?
The piece about decoding abilities, I just thought it was spelling. Like, that's a big one for me. Obviously, I'm not an expert on this, but yeah.
So I will say, oh, I see why I'm using my disappearing pen. That's why it's not saying. So Dahlia, you are right that spelling, of course, will be affected. But decoding is also how we figure out what words are. And so it's often the first step. And because so many words in our language, maybe they can sound out the words more easily, but they're going to struggle a lot more with spelling, particularly because in English we have so many homonyms, so many homophones, words that sound the same but are written differently. And that requires a connection between the spelling, the meaning, and the spelling, the sounds and the meaning. Whereas I don't have to pay attention to meaning to sound out words. So decoding particularly it may be easier. I've worked with many students who will be fine if with the letters that only represent one different sound. But maybe here they're going to struggle with the sh because this isn't representing t anymore. And this one might be different because it's not a y. So or the EA, anytime you have letters making a different sound than they would expect, that's where some of that decoding struggle is going to come in. So the decoding particularly is when you have the more complexity of our language, and but I agree with you that the spelling is a definite, decoding is a usual. Yeah, definitely spelling is much more affected and more difficult.
I think spelling is easier to very quickly see it because you see how they transpose the letters as opposed to decoding, and that's happening in their brain. So you don't really, at least me, I did not think about that. So I think thank you for, enlightening.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It is both. I mean, reading and writing are two sides of the same coin. So thank you, Dahlia. Sometimes people have asked about why the word disorder rather than difference or impairment or disability. I didn't write the law, and I will say that afterwards this came out, I did go to the RCWs for special education, and I found the words disorder, impairment, and disability completely interchangeable, seemed to be without rhyme or reason. I did have a colleague once point out, oh, I like the word challenge, yes, Charlene, that a disorder is a broader spectrum than a disability. So that to keep in mind that it may or may not be severe enough to be considered a disability and therefore trigger our child find applications. That there's a spectrum. And speaking of that spectrum, I do have that on the next slide. That really that dyslexia is part of the reading and writing spectrum. So they're what we call those poor performance, but we're talking about in a word reading, not the language comprehension. So if remember that the reading rope, it's kids who struggle with the word reading piece. And again, this comes from that American Academy of Pediatrics. That reading disability is within that lower tail of that normal bell shape distribution. But at the same time, I think it was Hugh Katz I saw once talk about the fact that these kids here really don't look much different than these kids here. So these are arbitrary lines that we draw. This is about 68% of the population. And he had a great slide once that had smiley faces here, and they got a little bit less, but I mean, these faces were pretty much the same. I mean, this line is it's not a fast difference between one and the other. It's just depends on how much we're struggling and how it's affecting their self-esteem, how it's affecting their educational growth, and how much work we need to do to help move them forward. It is something that, as you notice in the definition, it's seen in the brain. So my apologies if this picture is a little bit fuzzy. That came from Stanislaw Dehaene's book, Reading in the Brain. And while I don't go into the brain much, I do want to just illustrate that it is very, very complex. And when Dahlia, you mentioned about spelling and the reversal piece, reversals are natural with many of our kids when they come to school. I think it was Maggie was talking about kids with autism. The reversal piece is something that, because, so you notice the visual input, and then we have this letterbox piece. The visual input piece, that blue, and notice this is all on the left-hand side of the brain. That visual input place is where we see faces. And so if I only see half of it, my brain can assume the other half. And so but I can't do that with a letter because it doesn't have another half. And it's when you start as a learner and you recognize and you learn that I can't draw very well, so help me recognize this is a chair. Let's pretend it's a chair. That it's still gonna be a chair even if I turn it in lots of different ways. But now if I go to school and my teacher tells me this is an H, letters for the first time, directionality matters on the identification of what I'm looking at for letters and numbers. And so if I switch it this way, it's no longer an H. It just isn't. And the kids could say, why not? It's like, well, it just isn't. And that will become much more clear when you think about this versus this. It is something different. The U and the N, which look very similar, but upside down. So you've got the directionality matters. And this part of the brain that talks about what Stanislaw Dehaene calls the letterbox is actually only activated in individuals who are literate. So this is where you can see somebody without dyslexia, notice no activation in that part of the brain. They've done studies in multiple cultures and languages that only those who have learned to read have this part that's active. This is where it's noticing those letters that it saw, and then it's connecting it to the meaning and to the pronunciation and to my attention to reading. So all these factors that are coming into play in the brain. It's very complicated. I appreciate that, Charlene. So Maggie, so our learners who struggle with word reading and language comprehension are not considered to have dyslexia. That depends on who is making the diagnosis, because there are many arguments that we need to move away from requiring an IQ, because if we look back here, we could call this dyslexia regardless if it's word reading or language comprehension. You're right that this definition looks at just the word readings part. Many of our kids with dyslexia do struggle with both. However, most of them are stronger with their language comprehension than their word reading. That is more the classic dyslexic profile. Frankly, as an instructor, whether or not we call it dyslexia really doesn't matter to me. It's discovering what the kids really need to in their growth. So whether or not they need word reading or language comprehension or both, that's really what I want to determine. As a parent and as an advocate, I've talked to many other parents and advocates, it is important to have the word because it helps kids realize there's not something wrong with me. I'm not stupid, but I do need a different way of learning to help me access the written word. And that, I think, is a really crucial piece, is the advocacy behind the label. So Maggie, I apologize that that's not a clear, easy answer for that. And this is backed up in law. So there's a document that came out from the Department of Education. If I go back to the OSPI website about page, you will find back in 2015, I think it's here under resources. Yes, this federal Department of Ed Dear Colleague letter on supporting students with dyslexia says that IEPs can and should use the words dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. There's nothing in IDEA that says you can't. Please do use them. However, there was a recent Supreme Court case here in Washington. It was, I think, Issaquah. I don't quote me on that because I could be wrong, but I do remember that the outcome was that the school had, I don't remember who sued the parents or the school or whatever, but I remember the outcome was that the IEPs didn't have to say dyslexia if they were written and supporting and focusing on the needs of the students with dyslexia. So whether or not that word was there was immaterial. It can be there. It helps add that clarification, but it doesn't have to be there as long as you are focusing on what the student actually needs. And so they did everything as if that word was there, they just didn't have the word. So the court sided with the schools on that. Okay, so that's the dyslexia and literacy learning. I've mentioned this triangle a few times, but I'm glad I have it in here because I wanted to, is that the whole thing? Yeah. I wanted to emphasize, so remember I said you need to, particularly with the spelling Dahlia brought up, that spelling requires that we know the meaning way more. I mean, I can sound out a lot of words. I have no clue what I'm saying. Let me get my, this. So if I sounded out a word and I don't know what it means, let's take, I'll give you a couple of fun examples. Is that epitome? No. What's an epitome? That's not a word, is it? That's epitome. So it's a French word. Could probably Greek in influence because that E sounding like an epitome. That requires that I knew it. Another fun one, this one came from Louise Motes, is that read just? No, it's readjust. But again, my knowledge of meaning came into play to be able to read that correctly. So I really need to understand not only what the words look like, that's the orthographic form, but what it sounds like, its phonologic form, and what it means, its semantic form. So pulling all of these pieces together, the stronger I have all three of those, the more I'm going to remember words. And Melissa, was it you who was talking about the multilingual learners? So those multilingual learners, they have a bigger lift because not only are they learning these sound symbol connections, but they're learning the meaning as well. But then again, how many of our kids aren't learning new meanings too? So, but they don't have that oral vocabulary. The reason why I made that green arrow on the bottom is because kids come to school with this. A lot of kids, if the English is their first language, they're learning to read in their native language. They come to school with that oral vocabulary that they can be their springboard that helps them jump off to adding on and building their written vocabulary by adding on that written form. So this triangle, I think, is really, really, really essential. In Sally Shaywitz's new version of her Decoding Dyslexia, I found myself making this triangle in the margins all the time. Even if she didn't use these words, she was referring to this connection. In order to remember words, we have to know what they sound like. If someone said them to us, we recognize that sound. We connect it to something we know in meaning, and then we can add on that orthographic form, the written form, which may or may not be a strong sound symbol connections on that. Okay. Everybody good? Should we talk about what this looks like in the brain? The reading process. Oh, my animations are gone. Not sure what happened there. So I'll have to just do it with my my arrows here. So remember when I said, let me get this out. This is that visual part where kids start, they recognize the word. And as a learner starts, we're going to start on this purple route. Now the green, remember, we knew that sound symbol connect, we knew what the words sound like, that's the blue, and we knew what the words meant. But as we come to school and we learn to read, we start with this going through, sounding it out to identify it. This is what's called the lexical route. Sorry, the phonological route to reading. I don't have my notes on this one. I'm trying to go off my memory. This is the phonological route because I'm going through the phonology first to get to meaning. And that is our first step as we learn words. But then as we build this highway, if you want to call it, between my visual input and going through phonology to my meaning, I want to be able to, remember as I develop those sight words, recognize it, look at it, and go directly to meaning. But that takes time, and I have to go through the other route first. So this comes back to the decoding, Dahlia. In order for me to be able to recognize these words automatically, I need to decode them first, figure out what they sound like, and then to access meaning through that. Okay, I've done a lot of talking. I need to give my voice a break and give you an opportunity to reflect upon these concepts. So we're going to do just another brief opportunity for you to talk about them, and then we're going to get into how speech and print connect and into the syllables. So I'm going to give, I'm just going to continue with doing a small one, and because you have several, sometimes we'll have several small and sometimes we'll have longers. I'm pausing the recording on this one and giving you an opportunity to verbalize, to internalize, write things, or write to remember. Where on earth are my breakout rooms? Seriously? I'm gonna try and make breakout rooms. Pause recording, breakout rooms. Well, maybe we won't have breakout rooms right now. Let me try this. There we go. Okay. I'm going to actually take us down to 7. I was going to say 6 minutes, but we'll give you 7. And if your group is finished early, come on back and I'll close all the rooms. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Oh, Charlene, I love your Mardi Gras theme behind you. All right. I'm going to re-hit record. I'm recording, and we're going to start talking about understanding speech to understanding print, because that's a really crucial piece that we've been alluding to a lot this morning. So as people come back, I will kind of focus on some of these differences. I think we addressed some of them last month when we talked about sound symbol correspondences, but I know not everyone was here then. So some things to point out is the fact that they're both, speech is temporary. As soon as you say it, it's gone. Print is more permanent. People have pointed out, well, you could throw it away, yes, or you can delete it, but it is a written form that's not moving. It's not like, as soon as I say something, it's gone. They both have ambiguities. Notice we have the homophones and we have the homographs. I will say that we do have way more homophones in our language than homographs. The reason for this is because we have, number one, we have different ways. A word would have multiple meanings. And frankly, it's easier on our brains if it also has a different spelling, because it's faster to identify the difference. I don't need to look at the context to tell you the different meanings of those sight, or the different meanings of bear, or the different meanings of pair, or those ones where they're spelled differently. I don't need to look at the context to figure out which one you're talking about. And when I'm speaking, who cares how I'm spelling it? Because I need the context. The context is there when I'm speaking. But for reading, it's faster to look at the spelling, because if I look at those two examples of wind or wind, dove or dove, I have to look at the context to figure out which one I'm talking about. So there are fewer of those on. When we're talking about syllables and speech, we're talking about the timing and where stress is. And I'm going to put in I just put a link into the chat box for you about how English is a stress-timed language. This is why we have a lot of difficulty for our multilingual learners, individuals who come from a language where every syllable gets the same, every syllable gets the same amount of stress. In English, we stress the important words. We stress the important syllables. We have a lot of stress on the first syllable of a word, but not necessarily in names. So, Dahlia, you've got it on the first syllable. Melissa, you have it on the second syllable. So it's based on stress and how much we put where we put the emphasis. When we're talking about print, we're basing it around the vowel sound. So we're going to be exploring those. Let's take a look though, and this is something I've seen a lot of interesting conversations about how many syllables in these. Now, the first one, family, my daughter pronounces it like family, and she pronounces it and she spells it correctly. But when I see it, I'm going to say there are 3 syllables, right? Family. But how many of you actually pronounce it family, or do you pronounce it family, like 2 syllables? And so this is that difference between speech and print. Rhythm, I only see 1 vowel, but rhythm, we've got that we've got there a syllabic M that throws us off for spelling. Different, I see 3 vowels, so I would underline this and divide it if it were diff or ent, but natural speech, it becomes different, right? And that last one, I hear that on the radio all the time when they talk about terrorist, and they talk about a terror attack. I'm like, no, terror, it's 2 syllables. Terrorist, it's 3, but that's not how people speak. We speak very quickly, and we might even swallow those not stressed syllables. And so this makes things challenging for our learners, and we need to acknowledge this. You know, this isn't necessarily hard for reading because once they sound it out, different. Oh, that's different. They slide to the natural speech very easily. Spelling is a whole other story because you have to help them slow it down. It's like, okay, you're right. We say different, but your base word here is defer. So like, I beg to defer, or it is, you know, difference. So you have to help them recognize, like with family, people will have that acronym, father and mother, I love you, or to help them recognize it is family, even though we say family. This is that imperfect relationship between speech and print that we have to help our kids recognize. We don't write things exactly the way they say them because we've decided how to write things, and then we change how we pronounce things because language is always changing and growing. Okay, how about these? Let's take a look at these. I have seen quite an interesting conversation online. How many syllables in these? The first two, those are homonyms, vial and vial. Are they 1 or 2 syllables? And we don't have an I-A combination, and to be able to pronounce that, I would have my kids divide between the I and the A. Vial, right? It was a vial situation. No, sorry, that's the next one. That one is a chemistry tube that you put it in the vial. Luckily, these aren't words kids would use very much, but the second one, I'd say that is a 1-syllable word because the I consonant E. But how about owl? How many syllables is that? Owl, it sounds like 2 syllables, doesn't it? Carl, the syllabic L is very tricky. Then you've got fire and higher and higher. I mean, pale and pale. So we've got a lot of confusions, and this is where things get very complicated with syllables. I've seen linguists and experts argue about whether these are 1 syllable or 2. It's fascinating. So I use syllabification as a tool. If it's helpful, then there you go. It's a tool to pronounce things. And so when people say, is that 1 syllable or 2, does it really matter? Let's take a look at some of these. Like this, I would say this is more. You remember that suffix that makes it more. Your base word is high, higher, it makes it more. This is of that I consonant E that helps me with that ire sound. That I makes this a long I. Like same thing with fire. So it does sound like 2 syllables because that R, but we don't need to worry about that. We need to just think about the fire, ire. There we go. It's hard. That owl, ow, and then ol. This isn't a vowel, but just think about the owl one. It's a hard one. And vial, as I said, and vial. And pale versus pale. That's hard because it sounds like pale. And so these are just where our language can be complicated, and we want to give our kids the tools to sound them out. So this is what happens when an L is following a diphthong, that I-L, owl. Then we have that ire, the R does the same thing. Complicated, isn't it? All right, let's clear that off and look at where syllables fall into the progression from going from speech to print. So we have the speech at the top. You know, we talk about syllables as smaller than sentences or words, but bigger than the units of outset or rhyme. And at the 1-to-1, that's where, remember earlier I said our kids with dyslexia, Dahlia was talking about spelling. Our kids with dyslexia probably will not struggle too much with the 1-to-1, but there are only 10 consonants, maybe 11, that will only represent 1 sound. So you're talking about half our consonants, and all the vowels have multiple sounds. So very quickly, you have to think about how do we represent them in more than 1 letter digraphs or trigraphs, or whether it be, I'm going to want to change vowel teams to consonant digraphs or trigraphs, vowel digraphs and trigraphs. Let's put them together into the larger units. I'll grab this link for you for something to continue your reading. Okay. And again, let's think about the fact that we can segment the spoken language, pull these into pieces, syllables, sentences into words, into syllables. Let's think about those individual phonemes so we can translate them to print. All right, so when we get into syllables, We're talking about, again, that units, the larger units than phonemes or onsets, but the smaller units in sentences, words, or phrases. They are co-articulated. That means we say them at the same time, so it really feels hard to pull them apart. So, and of course, we've got that truism that all of our words are comprised of one or more syllables. It's organized around that vowel sound. So my question to you is, how do you help your kids find them? So that's the engagement opportunity. What do you do to help your kids identify the syllables in words? You can unmute, you can put something in the chat box. I'll bring up a couple of ideas. You can stamp if you see any of those. I will say, the hand under the chin is pretty common and pretty popular, because what's happening is your jaw is dropping for the vowel sounds. And as we said, each syllable has a vowel sound. The duck lips is one I learned from William Van Cleve. They talked about how our lips open more for the vowel sounds. So if I say alligator, alligator, you can't make your vowel sounds without opening your mouth. The beats on the body. Yes, I've heard that one too. Thank you, Maggie, for sharing that. That's something that I often do talk about, because I saw a video from Laura Rogan from Wired for Reading. That if you just do the clapping, if I say alligator and then you ask me how many syllables, I have no idea, because I was saying alligator and I was clapping. I can't also count those. So hence the trick of the on the body, where if I say alligator, how many syllables? I touch my hand, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I touch my hand, my elbow, my shoulder, my head. So as you said, Maggie, hand, shoulder, elbow, head. It helps me then not have to do too many things at once. But I'm going to show you a video in just a moment of a class where they do the clapping, but then they say the word again. And it doesn't take them a lot of time. So let's, I'm going to make sure my sharing with sound, I am. Good, there we go. And we're going to have a quick little video. And I think I'll put it in the chat box in case it doesn't work for you. It's very, very quick little exercise she does with her kids. There we go. Act, that's a great one. Thank you. Inch, act. Notice how we have multiple consonants, sounds after the vowel sound. All right. How about 2 or more consonants before? 2 consonants before. I'm going to put shy up here because I have one that consonant sound in the sh. When we think of one, spy. There we go. We have 2 consonant sounds first. And ply. Okay, look, notice it's easier with the Y sound at the end. How about also ski is another one. All right, let's move down to the CCVC. Flag. Whoops, where's my cursor there? And plop, I love it. I have stick. We have it again, that at the end. One consonant sound versus multiples. Let's keep us going. Expand to skip, I'll add that one. That's a good one too. While you're thinking of words with 1 consonant before, 1 consonant sound before the vowel, and 2 consonant sounds after. Told, that's a great one. Notice we've got that long O instead of tall, so that's an Old English word. I'm going to put in mask. So I'm somewhat cart is a good one. That R. Now that some linguists would say the R is one sound, k, art, and others will say k, art. So that one's a questionable one, depending on how you teach that, whether it's 1 sound or 2. But again, we're just building the complexity. And then we'll talk about why. All right, we're on 2 down here. Blend, perfect. We're making a lot of blends, aren't we? Slept. I have tramp. Or chimp. Wait, chimp would be only 1 sound. That would go this one previously. Crunch, that's another good one. All right, let's go on to the next category. 3 consonant sounds first. Oh, great. Splash and splat. And I have string. How about 3 and 2 here? We could make strings, huh? See if we can come up with another one. Splend. Splend. Is that a real word, Kimberly? Splendifer, splendid, stretch, but the ch is only one, so stretch would go here. Because even though we have a trigraph after it, it's only one sound, isn't it? Back, that one's going to, oh, thank you. We can, it is harder, isn't it, down here? Okay, let's then come up with one. How about here? 2 sounds before. I can give you one to start. Whoops. Stilt. Adding on the S helps make things easier with these. And let's see if this one, I scrimped and I saved. So if you have any others to add on, please do. But interesting looking at this complexity. So these at the top we call simple. I should have put those on the other side. These are the complex. Let me erase all those so that we can see them. And when we think about these consonant clusters, that simple syllables can be either simple or complex. And notice that all the simples by definition contain a vowel sound. That's the peak of the simple syllable. In the simple syllables, the vowel sound may be preceded by a consonant or followed by a consonant or both. And notice that the complex syllables have 2 or more consonant sounds in a cluster before or after that vowel sound. So I've got a quote from Louisa Moats in this where she says that if students lack basic awareness of all the phonemes in a spoken word, then they typically omit or substitute sounds in consonant clusters, especially that internal sound in a cluster. So for example, writing back as B-A-K or dream as dream, and stilt as stet. Notice they're missing some pieces in that. So thinking about the complexity of the syllables, this will be important later when we start talking about the different kinds of syllables, but I wanted us to think about the complexity first. We've got a couple of exercises in there. Strand, the st, and then and 2 afterwards. And splint and blink, is only 2 after, so that would be 2 before and 2 after rather than 3 on that one. I think we've got 3 there. But complicated, isn't it? Okay, we've got another one. Let's see. Scratch. There's only one sound though, so that would be a 3 before and 1 after in scratch, because that would go here. What, 3 before and 1 after this one? Because scratch, we're talking about sounds. Spring, spr, that would go here as well, wouldn't it? Spr, because the NG is making one sound. So it is complicated. We're talking about sounds, the complexity here. So thank you for all the engagement and hard work. Let's talk about a little bit of research on why we want to do this. Now you'll notice that actually they're not that old, maybe for some of us, but nonetheless, it really helps us to decode those longer words and helping them kids recognize those syllable types can support our English language learners. I feel like it's helping them categorize and recognize how to pronounce these. So then, and going back to that decoding, Dahlia, you were talking about, that if I help help my students understand syllables. It helps them decode new words, build that sight word vocabulary, and remember the spellings of words. Again, making that connection between the orthographic form, remember the red on the top, and the meaning and sounds on the bottom. Okay, I've made a reference to this a little bit before, but when we're talking about syllable types, we're talking about conventions for orthography, not speech. So, for example, with the word middle, I would say, if I asked you, where do you divide? And if once you did caterpillar, that was a great example, caterpillar. Or here, middle, I will pronounce it like that, but I'm going to spell it with two Ds. That's that first D is going to help remind me that that I is short. In affectation, I should have put the second D, but with the dull in there, I might say it affectation, but I'm going to spell and divide it in my writing between the two F's to help remind me that that A is short. And then I have my long EA in the beginning, affect, and then A and shun. So these are conventions. It's just a tool. I mean, heard people criticize syllabification because this doesn't go along with morphology and morphemes. It is a tool to help kids pronounce the word correctly. And then we'll talk morphemes next month about how to help them understand meanings and those kinds of connections. So they're both tools that are equally important and should be used together. But sometimes it helps to bring them apart to really help and delve into them. Yes, Melissa, bell coding boxes, let's add them in. Definitely love those. Okay, so let's get into the syllable types. We're going to start with a warm-up. This paragraph has, my question for you is, how many multisyllabic words do you see? I'm going to pause talking, let you read this, and see how many multisyllabic words you find in this paragraph. And what do you think about them? What kinds of syllables do you see? How are they different? You can underline them, star them, put them in the chat box, whatever you like. How many do you see? Or how many would you say if you were reading this aloud? Melissa's starting off with us with some annotations. I'm not going to chime in until afterwards because I will be honest, I tripped myself up on it when I first started doing this. There were some words that I thought were multisyllabic because of how they looked, but when I said them, they weren't. So let that be a hint for you. Cindy, have you done this before with me? Remember, multisyllabic words, not sounds. Looks like someone in the green is doing sounds, b, g, and although sounds and st, r, I, p, t. That's a 6 sound. Cindy, I think you're right. If I remember correctly, I don't have it in my notes for this one. But the question is, what are they? Let's find them all. We have ripping and ripening and apples and biting and slimy. I noticed that whoever had striped recognized that. That's one syllable, isn't it? Even though it looks like two. Bitter, into, starry. Licking, bucket, sitting. 12. But there are a lot others that look like it, aren't there? I'm making sure this is the same passage, that I haven't made any changes, because I sometimes do that. Sitting, dreamed. So tell us about dreamed, Rebecca. How many times did your jaw drop and dreamed? Because we notice it's not happening. I think someone's choosing green for perhaps single syllable words that might be different. Rebecca, you want to unmute? Say dreamed and caused and slopped and sloped. Does your chin drop more than once? I'm with you, Rebecca. Those ones caught me the first time because I saw the multiple vowels. Someone's choosing adapted. Thanks, Melissa.
I guess I was thinking, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead because I think we were on the same page.
I think I was thinking that ending ed was its own ending, like its own syllable at the end, but it's not.
Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. It depends on the pronunciation.
Dreamed.
Dreamed.
So dreamed
In
is not 2 syllables. No, I know. So she just said sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't.
Oh, so if I said
Yeah.
if I said landed, notice how it's a different syllable. But dreamed,
Landed. Dreamed.
do you hear in dreamed, the ed is just adding a d sound. And caused, it's just adding a d sound. Slopped, it's adding a t. Sloped, it's adding a t. But your jaw isn't dropping again because it's only adding that. So sometimes it's a d and a t. That's not adding another syllable. But landed, planted, coming off the top of my head. Forested, but if you hear an id, you are hearing another syllable. So that's this where it tricked me up the first time as well. So striped and scarred and slopped and sloped and caused and dreamed.
So slopped is not 2 syllables.
Slopped.
Sorry, I thought you were talking to me before.
Oh, it's okay.
Slopped. Slopped. How many times does your chin drop? Slopped. Slopped.
Slop pitted. Slop pitted.
That's how I learned, but by putting your hand underneath your chin
Uh-huh.
and seeing how many times your jaw hits your chin.
Weird.
And this is why next time when we talk about morphemes, we're going to box a syllable, a suffix, and recognize that, oh, we're going to recognize this was an O consonant E, and this had an O, and I had to double the P's, but my base word slop, but it doesn't always add, sometimes a suffix will add a syllable and sometimes it doesn't. It's particularly ED. I mean, all the others, the ING, all the other suffixes, I mean, unless it's S, of course, but the ED is sometimes it's another syllable and sometimes it's not. So Addie and was it Cindy said 12, so let me get a different color here or get rid of some of these complicated. So the 12, actually, on the next slide, I'll color. The chin drops don't always work. Licking, because the it is so short, and I think, Cindy, you're right, because the chin drops when we have stronger emphasis on the syllables. Lick has an king, so in the licking, and so that was a little bit hard. So yes, there are specific rules when the ED, and it has to do with what the letters that come before it. It's not random, it's pronunciation. You know, so notice we have the slop, we have a p, which is quiet because it becomes slopped and sloped as a t, but caused is a vocalized caused. And so I'm going to clear all this off, so we'll bring up which ones are the true multisyllabic. Here we go. Ripping, ripening, apples, biting, bitter, into, starry, licking, slimy, bucket, and sitting, which we have twice. So 11 words, but 12 occurrences. Complicated, isn't it? Okay, let's get into what those are. We are going to start here. And I saw one of the questions was, how many are there? Well, so I've known a program that says 7. 6 is what I see most often in the literature. It's what we used when I was at Chartwell. Most programs will use 6. And I'm going to give you a moment to see if you know what any of those are. You can put it into the chat box or you can put on the white space we have here. As a clue, that sentence uses one of every kind of syllable type. So I'm going to pause for a moment, see what we already know. And then, of course, if this is all new to you, that's fine. Just watch it come. And we will go more in depth into each one as we progress. Okay, Cindy has labeled the first one as no, as an open syllable and a closed syllable. Someone's noticing, I'm coming too quickly. Melissa, vowel consonant E. Some people call it magic E. Some people vowel consonant E. Some people silent E. I think that's how I was originally taught. I've changed and moved away from that because I hope I've done it on this slide, because there are other reasons for silent E, which we talked about in orthography. Vowel team or vowel digraph. R controlled or vowel R. And consonant LE or the final stable syllable. So we've got a couple people chiming those in. I'll pull them up for us. Closed, open, vowel constant, R controlled, R, there we go. There's our smile for the vowel consonant E. So I do have in our, I think in our handouts, a poster of this for you. Let me take a quick look. There is a handout icon, so let's go to our handouts and find how to get there. Let me go to our structured literacy resources that we put into the chat box. And if you don't have this, I can grab it again for you. I put it in at the very beginning. So let me grab that copy URL, put it in there for you. And we're going to follow this link to our handouts. And I kind of made it, unfortunately, a little hard to find. You're looking to look for the Frank and Franken handouts. This came from when my colleague Kate Franken and I did a presentation for IDA back in 2016. The reason why I haven't pulled it out is because I think that her support model teacher tips are really useful. But here we go with the syllabification. I didn't make the little smile on the A consonant E on this one, but it's the way that I was taught to do it. And it's what's important, I think, on linking this is that it's the vowel and the E together that are making the vowel sound in this syllable type. So there's a takeaway for you that you can have this as a reference. A couple other references that you can use is Common Core Appendix A in the Common Core. And just a quick question on that. I'll do a quick poll to see who's familiar with Common Core Appendix A, because it's kind of weirdly embedded and weirdly labeled. So where is my Appendix A? Here it is. Let's do a quick poll on that. If not, people don't know about it, I'll definitely take you there. Okay. I have at least one person say I have no idea. So I like the polls sometimes are nice and anonymous. We have at least one person, several. I'll give you a moment if people want to participate, and then we'll share. We're at 66%. I'll give you 5 more seconds. All right, I'm going to end poll and share so you can see that you are not alone if you've never heard of this. All right, so let me pull this up for us because I want to show you why I completely understand. So first, I'm going to give you the link to it. Hopefully this link is the good one. I have fixed it in my resources. Okay, hopefully that one works. And I'm going to pull up the Adobe because it's faster and easier. And I'll show you why I completely understand if you've never looked into it, because frankly, it is called, here it is, research supporting, here's what it's called, Appendix A, research supporting key elements of the standards and glossary of key terms. Not helpful for the fact that starting on page 17, where's 17? Sorry if you get dizzy from scrolling, I'll just type up here. Starting on page 17, we have some reading foundational skills. It's a reference for you as teachers. I'll make it a little bit smaller so we can see more at a time. So they start with some phoneme grapheme correspondences, some common spellings of the common graphemes of the different phonemes. So you can see the phonemes here, common graphemes, kind of in order of commonality. I would disagree here. The C is more common than the K, but the K is more consistent. So you can give them that. Then we have vowels on the next page. That page can't be found. Okay, let's fix that for you so you all can have access to it. Let's try here, Common Core Appendix A. Let's see if this one works. Yes, that one looks good. There you go. Okay, so then we've got the vowels and some phonological awareness, which I highlighted recently because that's something I'm working on. And then we're going to scroll down to orthography. We've got some definitions and understandings. And page 21 has our 6 types of syllables. Couple things I would draw attention to, though, is that because these were made by humans, they are imperfect and sometimes a little bit odd. So by that, I mean, take a look at, they have dapple and hostel and beverage. Interestingly, beverage is 3 syllables, but they only highlighted the closed one. Fine, okay. But then compete and despite, they didn't separate them. So sometimes they have the syllables separated, sometimes they don't. Again, it's an imperfect tool. So, but they do have the vowel consonant E's highlighted, the open syllable highlighted in program, table, and recent. Our vowel teams, TI is not a vowel team, and neither is FUL. The EAU is, so there's a mistake there for beautiful. Trainer, they've got congeal, they've got spoilage, they've got injurious. ES is 2 syllables. Injure, ES. The jur is the vowel R and the or, and then we have 2 in shorter. And then our consonant LE is the bull, the gull, and the tull. Again, I would separate those out. So you have dribble, again, between the 2 B's, because otherwise it would be dribble. Beagle and little, again, with the 2 L's, because otherwise it would be little. So that's a reference for you. I also have this handout in our handouts that you can take away. This came from Kate Franken, and that's in our ADA compliant handouts. It's the Clover. And what I like about she's done this, and I've also seen, I think it was a really great reading who, instead of using Clover, they use Velcro because Velcro is sticky. I like that. But I do like Clover in that we start with the closed. Then we have the consonant LA, which is not as common, but it works. And then the open vowel teams, silent E, and then the R controlled. Again, I would change this to vowel consonant E or magic E or E influence or E controlled. If we're going to have R control, why not E control? Because let's stay with consistent as much as possible with our kids. And on the second page, you'll find multisyllabic examples of them all. Notice that we don't have a lot of multisyllabic versions of open. We'll talk about those in a moment. And the consonant LE never stands alone. That's the French influence. Okay, so those are some resources for us. And we'll go back to our slide. I somehow have that twice. Nope. Oh, I was using the word stipple versus stipple as an example. All right, let's get into closed syllables. So as you can imagine, we call it closed because we have a consonant that's closing off that vowel, so as we might see with kids. And it is going to be a short sound, so that if I'm going to be helping my kids with these and practicing these, this is the first one we do. Despite, who was it that was working with kids with autism? It wasn't Melissa. Maggie. There you go. I'm seeing a thumbs up now, Maggie. When my son was about to go to school, he said, Mom, A says, I said, yes, honey, you're right. But your teacher's going to want you to think about A making the sound because you're right. The A does represent like in about and banana, and in my name, Alicia. So he's right, about, around. That unstressed A is However, the most common representation of this letter, or most common sound that this letter represents, is a. So that's what we teach first. And when I say consonant keyword sound, so for example, A followed by a consonant, apple, a. is one way that for my students who need those supports. Other students may be able to just say a apple a or a. Now, the reason why I might get them into the habit of saying a followed by a consonant is because then when we get into the open syllables, they're not going to say a followed by a consonant. It's just going to be a at the end of an open syllable. So it represents a versus, in this situation, it represents a. So we get lots of practice with that. Notice how I've underlined just the clear closed syllables. I emphasize the E in umbrella, because that also has an S sound. But notice that the A at the end is not, and the E in the second E in elephant is not an S sound. Elephant. It becomes swallowed. So with my kids, I would say, you know what, let's put a little dot on top of that to recognize that that's a schwa. It's not as clear. It doesn't play by the same rules. It doesn't say its clearest sound. It's not a clear It's not elephant. It's elephant. Elephant. Notice how this is L comes close, clear, like the I in inch and the I umbrella. Even though my accent is here, it's an umbrella. It's a clear S sound here too as well. Octopus. Now they swallow this one. And I swallow this one. That's where it's clear. So it's again, where do you get that clear or sound is when it's accented. Okay, we're going to clear all that off. And I'm going to give you a quick test your knowledge. Which one of these words do you think is made up of only closed syllables? You can put it into the chat box or put a stamp on it. And why? Or you can cross ones out that don't. Kimberly, are you saying yes to that or crossing it out? I'm seeing establish and momentum, so let's give them both a try. We're seeing some crosses. So it's because we have mo, there's an open, meant, there's a closed, and momentum, there's a closed as well.
Sorry, I was saying yes to it. I couldn't get the thing unmuted with the writing.
All the things going on.
Sorry.
No worries. Then we have S, tab, and lish. We've got nice short sounds and easy ones with that. Yes. Here we have con, there's a short one. And fis, I hate that they don't have a dot there. And Kate, we have a little A consonant E, so not on this one as well. All right, that was a fun practice, I hope. Let's get into the open ones, which we saw in mo, like in momentum. Now, I will say, I'm going to go back to our list for a moment. Actually, do I still have it up here? I do. This one will work. When I was teaching at Chartwell, we spent a lot of time with closed and got our kids really, really comfortable with that. And you'll notice on my list, open came second. It's not doing that here. And the reason for this, and frankly, this is a lot more common and it's easier for kids. I would not teach open syllables until I was ready to do multisyllabic words because there are so few. You could do single syllable words with these ones, with these ones, with these ones, but these two you have to be able to do when my kids are ready for multisyllabic words. Now I'm going to show you an example in a moment that has first graders with going between open and closed. And it's great for them to start with the concept, but I don't think they're going to be doing it with the reading but I don't think they're going to be doing much spelling with it. So when we go back to our, so get this thingy, go back to our list. Here, where's our Franken? Here we go. Just keeping in mind that even though we have them in, it's kind of in the order of commonality, depending on the complexity of the words, I would skip number 2 unless my kids were ready to go to multisyllabic words. Oh, that's why I wanted to look at our Clover to see how few. I mean, he, she, me, white, by, shy. There really aren't that many. Yes, and that's Melissa My kids with dyslexia didn't have so much problem reading those. And that's not a problem. I would get into open when I'm ready for multisyllabic words. Because those me, she, he, we, do, by the time the kids came to me, they were 4th grade and above. Those ones they'd seen enough of that they had created a visual memory for that. So the single syllable words, I feel like our kids don't usually struggle with those. It's the multisyllabic words that can throw them off, because where do I divide? And that's where it gets more complicated.
So when they read the word he, did they recognize that they flipped the vowel to a different sound? Because if you're harping on that closed sound so much, you would think they'd be like, wait, it's not right there.
I don't remember them ever really noticing or
Okay.
caring.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a difference in an intervention mindset or
Beginnings teaching mindset, which
Yeah.
is what you're going to see in the next one, where it does help them notice that. And so that's a great connection to this next video we're about to watch. So let me pull it up, and then you'll have some opportunity to pause and reflect with each other. So I'm going to pause the record. All right, welcome back. I think everyone's back now. Is there anyone who would like to share something from your breakout room, something you discussed or processed together?
Hi. Well, I've just been mostly listening, but some great comments in my group about just like using music as a tool for kids to like get that awareness of sounds. So thank you, my group, for sharing all that you did. Some really great ideas in there.
Thanks, Kevin. You're right. Let's get the beat, feel it, feel the cadence of it. I appreciate that, especially for second language learners who may have a different cadence in their language. I'll never forget when I was learning to be an ESL teacher, one of my professors had a poem about the tall trees, big tall trees, and the coast of California is a beautiful sight with its tall trees, big tall trees, and just getting that cadence.
Yeah, it's fun too, you know.
And we love music and rhythm and getting paying attention to language. Thanks, Kevin. How about from another group? People talked to the very last minute, so hopefully that means it was a good conversation.
I wanted to say that coming from like high school, working with high schoolers, it's a shame that, and I work with children from across the country, not just one state or one city. And so I get to see a little bit of what's going on, but the overall issue seems to be that these skills were not provided to children, and now they are, teenagers, and like many of the times, so most of the times when I get involved is because it is like discipline issues. And so we're like, so let's get to the bottom of what is exactly is going on. And it just turns out that, when they are teenagers, they want to fit in and they don't have the skills to compete with their peers. And therefore it's like, so I gotta figure out a way to mask this. And what I wanted to say is like, it's a shame that this training is not provided to mandatorily to every teacher before you put that teacher into the classroom. So yeah.
With you, Dahlia. I did 7 years of teacher prep higher ed, and I tried. I tried. They didn't always listen though. So that's why I teach people who are already teachers. So thank you. And I appreciate that. And when I taught high schools, I taught elementary, then middle, then high. And I saw so many bad habits in high school, or kids who just had no idea how to attack a word they've never seen before. They don't know how to sound out these words. And so I would have my poster of my syllable types on the wall. And even if I didn't explicitly go through it with them, there was a reminder. It was an anchor chart just for them to remember, oh yeah, what that, to help them out when they needed to. So let's get into some of those others. The vowel consonant E, and for my kids who need them, I do have the flashcards of these as well. And I would use them, especially in the learning from my younger ones. When I was at Chartwell, we would have these. And they would learn it as a unit. Well, the U has two different sounds. I won't bother with that one, but the O represents, O consonant E represents O, like in home. And the I represents I, like in I consonant E represents I, like in pine, where it spells this. The U, there we see there's the U consonant E like in mule, and the U like in mule, and U like in flute. And we have that one consonant. Now, every now and then you'll need that E will jump two consonants like in breathe and instead of breath. But it's rare. And that's sometimes you have to think about that E differentiating those sounds. Generally, it is just with one consonant. And of course, we know it's in multisyllabic words, it's not always going to be its clear sound. When you have the ICE or an ISE at the end of a multisyllabic word, it might not be ice, it might be is, or so you might have to play around and flex those. But in single syllable words, it will be that clear long sound. Okay, and let's look now to our controls. I have those on cards as well. And my kids recognize and learn or, and R. Whoops, where's my R? Oh, here's my R. Now notice I had to say the same thing for the ER, the IR, and the UR. And I don't know if I have a YR in here. I don't think I do. Because it also has that sound. It's easy for reading. Spelling is another story, because when I say in spelling, I have multiple ways of spelling that. And so that's where my understanding of meaning needs to come in to know which one is the correct spelling. Reading is not as hard. And then you see the R and the or, those unique sounds. Notice how I say when accented, because if I say dollar or sailor, that OR or the AR become an sound. Not so hard for reading, much harder for spelling. Okay, our vowel teams. Some people call them vowel pairs, or you can call them vowel digraphs and trigraphs. Basically, it is more than one letter representing a vowel sound. And notice how it's not always more than one, what we call vowel letter, because the IGH, we've got that GH or the EIGH, that's all working together to make one sound. So notice though some patterns. So we have the AI and the AY together. We have, just like we have the OY and the OY. And the reason for this is because the I and the Y are interchangeable depending on placement. So they make the same sounds. It all depends on placement. Even if you think of, for example, the word onion or million or billion, you hear the I making that y sound in the middle. So the Y can make the I and the I, like in Jim, and the I and like in sky, and it can even make the E like in happy and baby. But the I can also make the Y sound if it's in the middle. So if it's a part of a team, though, the A and the I, the A sound and the OI sound, then we use that I in the beginning and the middle, and we use the Y at the end. So again, those patterns, you'll see the same pattern with the AU, with the U and the W. So it's going to be an AU or an OU if it's in the middle or the beginning, and if it's going to be an AW or OW if it's at the end. There was another OW over here, the snow. I should probably rearrange it so they're all three on the same line, but you have that OW making ow or OW making O. And when your kids say, how do you know if it's which one to pronounce it? Is it co or cow? Is it snow or snow? That's why when we start these patterns, this recognition, we need to use words that are in kids' vocabulary. Because it could be O or ow for that. Hence, when my daughter was younger and struggling with the spelling of the number 2, and she spelled it this way because she knew there had to be a W in there somewhere. I said, honey, that's either toe, like because OW is saying O like in snow, or tow because OW is saying ow like in cow. I said, where can you put that W where it won't get in the way of the vowel sound? Let's put it there in the beginning. Because remember, twin and twist and 12 and 20, that TW combination has to do with 2. So helping them understand meaning rather than memorizing, because your memory can fail. Someone who's taught high schoolers, your memory can fail on this. Let's help them understand the reason behind it. All right, and then there's another situation where you have a combination that could represent more than one. Here's another one, the IE, like in pie or chief. So you have to sometimes flex it and think of it, is it, you've got pie, is that chife? Well, that's not a word you know, but chief is. And chef would be another one, CHU. I think that's IE as well. So again, you have to flex them. The EA, the most common is the E, and the is less common, and the A is even less common. But again, you're teaching your kids to flex these different sounds, that this spelling could represent more than one sound, and we have to keep in mind the meaning for that as well. All right, last but not least is those consonant LEs. These are only at the ends of multisyllabic words, and frankly, they make things diminutive. They make, they were originally suffixes. Someone asked me recently, I think it was yesterday, well, isn't DLE a suffix? I'm like, oh, not anymore. No. I mean, because we can't stick them on other words, and it's just easier not to teach it as a suffix. Just teach it as a syllable. And because if you think of poodle and marble and fable, etc., when you take that off, you have a part of a word. But when we're using these kinds of words with our kids, right, in marble, the mar, it's just easier for our kids right now to not even think of these as suffixes. Let's just call these a syllable type. And that I can take them off and change them. In fact, I have a great exercise later I will show you where you can take a paper plate and put the BLE and put it around different kinds of endings, or the CLE or the DLE. You can take them and change them, but it's clearer and easier just to call this a syllable. Originally, it was spelled with the E in between, but then the French invaded. I always say when in doubt, blame the French. So this is a French construction having that E at the end there, and it does have a vowel sound, but it's really emphasized by the O. The L is making that vowel sound. So we've added the E for clarity. I do have an asterisk with the SLE because it's really, really rare. So if you have a soul, it's probably going to be the STLE. The SLE, like in measle and tussle, I think are really the only two. And to find out whether, when their kids say, well, give me some words that have BLE, or how do I know the SLE is really rare? I take them to my favorite dictionary site, which is onelook.com. And we're going to put an asterisk before the BLE construction. And let's find words that end in bull. And I'm going to sort it by commonness, and I want filter by commonness. And I can see, oh, mandible, that's a tooth. And marble, you had soluble. Now it's going to have a lot of ABLEs because that is a suffix, ABLE, quibble, stable, unstable, permeable. Let's do the SLE, and I'll show you how rare that is. That's it. Isle, which is French, and isle, which is French. Tussle, hassle. That's about it. Whereas you'll find STLE much more common. Okay, not a lot more common, but they're still not that common. But nonetheless, you can see if you want to just give them a bunch of words that follow that pattern, just put in a spelling pattern and it will come up with all the words that have that letter string. I put the asterisk before because I want words that end in that. If I wanted words that began with something, let's do like a prefix, we would put the asterisk on the other side. So let's think of dis with it. And again, I have it sorted by commonness and common words only, but nonetheless, we're going to have a whole bunch of words that start with DIS. Disuse, disapprove, disarrange, etc. So OneLook is one of my favorite dictionaries, and I'll put that in the chat box for you. I am definitely got tools for when the kids say, prove it, or you can tell I taught middle school and high school. Okay, and when we code these, I would have my kids put a half bracket around it, just for them to recognize. I mean, you could do a straight line like you do with other decoding, but I find it easier for the kids to recognize that this is a unit that makes a sound, and we're just going to learn it as one unit, both full, cold, dull. And I have a couple cards with those too that I forgot to bring up for you. There's the E to the shun. Here we go. a card for they just practice this. When they see this letter combination, they say toll. When they see the BLE, they say bowl. When you see this, this is what you say. All right. So we're going to give you a practice opportunity to play some of these. And I have some Jamboard fun. You can create a copy for your group or smallest. I'm gonna let you make a copy for your group because I'll show you how to do that. Because that way people are not working on more than one. I have two differences. I didn't add frame 5 and 6 will be the kind of sorting. And you can talk about your understanding of syllables. You can play around with these. So here's our Jamboard. To make a copy so that each group has your own. And here are the two sorts. You can add in your own letters. So these are the representations. These are the labels. One of them got deleted. I'll let you handle that. And then I have some parts of words or word parts that you can sort. To make your own copy, see these 3 little dots up in the top where next to share, it says more actions. You click that and you can make a copy so that only your group is looking at your version versus everybody working on the same one. Okay, and because we have small groups, I don't think we need a lot of time with this, but I'll give you some time to just kind of explore, practice. We can also, actually, let's also practice number 7 because we've learned them all. So let's do 5, 6, and 7. And 7 is where you can label them and practice pronouncing them. So these are different labels that you can use for them. And you can use this to write on, make, for this vowel, vowel, consonant, etc. All right, so we'll have some practice time. I'll make it a little bit longer just because I want you to be able to play with them and discuss the things. So, and we actually go on lunch break at 11:45. So I'm going to put this until lunch so you guys can choose your time with each other, how to use your time. Because I was going to give 10 minutes, but that takes us to lunchtime. So I'm recording. Welcome, Dahlia. And let's have a chat. Looks like somebody worked on, what are we missing here? Closed, vowel team, open, vowel. We're missing the consonant LE. So let me add that. Those are probably pretty self-explanatory. We'll put them here. And open are controlled and vowel consonant E. Let's start with a conversation about what you talked about in your group. How did this feel? Were there any interesting conversations that came out of this? Looks like people did a great job. I'm just going to open it up to open the floor. Who would like to start?
We had an interesting situation over the word over. That one was a bit confusing. And we decided that we think you underlined the O to let us know what you wanted us to know.
Yes, that is correct. Just like the PLE and stupel is the consonant LE. Yes, that sometimes it's hard to get just individual ones like that. So this is actually something I did with my kids when I was teaching at Chartwell. I don't think I came up with this. I think I got it from one of my colleagues. Let's see, how did we do on it? Any weird ones? I think people often, good job on the braid, vowel, vowel. We have an OW in there. Can't remember if there's an OW on there or not. Oh, it must have been number 12 or 24. Because the OW will sometimes throw people off as well as a vowel team because they don't think of Y and W as teams, but it is 2 letters that are making a vowel sound. So we are calling that a vowel team. Thank you for sharing, Rebecca. What about any other groups? Did you have some conversation about the syllable types? How did that feel? I'll take a look at this as we give you a moment to unmute. Oh, there we go. There's that OW. Anything came out of your conversation that you'd like to share? I hope you had a good conversation.
I guess I just want to say that it takes a long time for this to be second nature, like a lot of time. And it almost feels like this activity makes it sound easy. But it's not natural if you didn't grow up learning this or have it in your teacher ed program.
Tremendous point, Melissa. I mean, this is something that we did with my kids after months and months. I mean, we spent a long time with the clothes. We spent a long time. This was after they had learned them all. This was kind of like a review of that.
And
But
we
you're
didn't
right.
really have a lot of time. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
We didn't really have a lot of time to make conversation about any of this. I think we spent a good 20 minutes, like well into our lunchtime, just organizing it and getting it set up. So we
My
didn't really.
apologies. I shouldn't have.
Oh,
kept you
no.
that long.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We wanted to
Um,
do it or we just cut out.
I meant for the room to close after 10 minutes, so it didn't close until I got back and realized, oh, they're still open. It's an
Yeah.
interesting process, though, isn't it?
Alicia, I don't know if there's anything you can do about this, but you know how you asked us to copy it for our own
Mhm.
groups, which I did, but then I had to go through and like change the settings so that they could use it. And anyways, that's what took us a while to get started. And I don't know if there's a way of doing that so that when we copy it, we already have those settings, but maybe for next time you can look into that.
I don't know if that's a possibility, but it's something that that's good to know. Good feedback, Melissa. Thank you. Or at least let people know that if you make a copy and you want to share it with others. I think what I was thinking is that you could just share screen with others and you could be doing it while, so not everybody had to be working on the same one. Challenging, isn't it? All right, want to do some fun? Do we have most people back now? All right, I have a video which is fun with learning. Oh, we stopped here, but there was actually we'll do this and then we'll get into we'll do this fun thing and then we'll get into the schwa. So let me pull this up. And this is I think she's a first grade teacher who she and her husband made a bunch of these during COVID. And what's funny is that some of these songs I only know because of their work. When I hear it in the public, I'm like, oh, I know different words for that. So let's just start off with this one. Syllable, and we're talking about learning syllables and dividing them.
Yeah.
There we go. The asterisk there is because there are no set in stone scope of sequences, but there are many that you can look at as examples. Exploring characteristics, that's key. I mean, just like Kimberly, we were talking about a moment ago about words that may not be as regular in their sound syllable correspondences. It's the same thing here. What are the characteristics? Like you saw in the video earlier with the syllable inspectors from Margie Gillis. I can actually pull those up under syllables, and Margie Gillis is syllable inspectors. So notice how she's talking about, let's analyze what this looks like. Our close one you saw in the video. This is what you see, this is what you hear, or I would add the mouth to this is what you say. She has the same for the open, which we saw in the video. Here's the silent E, or I would call these vowel consonant E's. One vowel followed by one consonant and a final E. That's the long sound for the vowel. Here's our vowels. She breaks it into vowel talkers and vowel whiners. Personally, I think that that's a little complicated for kids and more than we need to. If you remember earlier, I said that there are some programs that have 7 instead of 6. This is where they break it apart. They break it into vowels that I think that this would be like A and E versus these like the O and the O and the Oi that make whining sounds. For me, that's more complicated than we need to make with kids. I would just say if you have more than one letter making a vowel sound, that's a vowel team. And then we have the vowel R. Notice what we have, this is what you look like. One vowel followed by an R. The R is bossy, it takes over the sounds, and here are some examples. And then we have the consonant LE as well. So looking at what are those characteristics, and let's do lots of practice with the reading and spelling, starting with the single syllable words in isolation and then in connected text, both in reading and writing. And of course, above all, always fading our support. As our kids get more independent, we pull that support away. And here is an example. This is what we would do at Chartwell. We used Slingerland's approaches. So again, this is probably very similar to most people, what you're used to seeing when it comes to explicit instruction. We're going to demonstrate this, what we're doing. We're doing the modeling. Individual students are going to practice with my guidance. We're verbalizing. Remember, we verbalize to internalize. The class is practicing with guidance. And again, verbalize to internalize. And then we have the independent practice, and our goal is that independent functional use. Okay, rather than a verbalize and talk time, you're going to have some practice time. Oh, now we have some instructional reminders. When is the next talking time? We'll do this practice and then we'll give you a break to talk to each other about all this and how do we teach these. But I do have some instructional reminders first and then something else I'm going to show. So I'm going to give you a moment to take a look at this. We're going to have a conversation about why. Which one do you think would be the best one for teaching and practicing the vowel consonant E syllables? Which group would you choose? So this again is thinking about, we're going to look at that word list and how do we choose which ones are the right ones? One person's given a that's. Thanks, Maggie. We're saying D because it has no digraphs. Okay, what was wrong with A? Kimberly, why is some a problem? I agree with you. Why is some the problem here?
Because it doesn't make the O say its name. And so
Yeah.
that's not teaching the right concept.
And this is one, if you want to call that a red flag word or a heart word or a word we need to learn differently. And this is though a pattern that we can teach our kids what's called the scribal O, where that O becomes an us sound, like in mother and some and love. And it's oftentimes before an M or a V, it becomes that us sound. So definitely we don't like that one. And this one is lose. Ooh, that's not, yeah, this one too. It's lose, not lopes. So I would definitely, that's a weird one. Again, that was one I would have my kids spend some more time analyzing. It should be los, but it's not. It's going to be an ooh, which normally we spell with an O or a U, doesn't it? All right, let's look at B. What are the problems with B? Shirley says Prince. We've got a short I there, don't we? Because we have two consonants. And dance, exactly. Again, we have two consonants. Thank you, Maggie. I was just about to say, why is that E there? Maggie, you want to talk about it? Why is that E is there in Prince and dance?
Yeah, it's making that C say its sound.
Making the which?
The C say
Exactly. Without it, it would be prink and dank. All right, so let's look at C. We like now C and D are very close to, aren't they? We have the O, I, U, A, O, and A, and A, I, O, U, A, and A. So the consensus, we're looking at D because people don't like the digraphs. I also see we have a blend here, which is more challenging. And this one is clearer because of that. Now, later, save is a fine word, but if your kids say, well, wait a minute, if that is save, why isn't this have? And he remembers why not. Maggie knows some silent E stuff. Want to contribute? We can't end a word in a V. Exactly. That's why live and live are spelled the same way. So we have some additional rules we need to think about when we're practicing those. All right. We'll give you a little bit more and then we'll give you a chance to talk to each other. Some instructional reminders. Number one, closed syllables. Remember that they're closed followed by a consonant. Open syllables is only one vowel. And those vowels, teams and vowel consonant E's, I mentioned, those are more than one letter making that sound. And that long sound requires that more than one letter. I have a link here for visual cards. So let me pull these up and see what I was going to give to you. I want to see what it was first because they may or may not be ADA compliant. Let's see what this is in here. These are the cards that I created. They are not ADA compliant, but I will put them in the chat box for you anyway. Please keep in mind that these are a tool that you can use. So these are for the visual prompts going from symbol to sound. It is very, very hard to find a font that is not just the obnoxious, the A with the really funky thing loop on the top. So these are going from your visual prompts. And you can also use this with auditory, but I added in all of the sound symbol correspondences with these. You can see we have your digraphs, your trigraphs, your ink, ank, onks. Look here, we have our vowel consonant E's to practice with. We have our vowel R's, our vowel teams. And I think I put in no, I don't have them in here. My goal is I need to remember to put into the notes this different represent how a keyword that would help you remember what that means. So for example, this one would be sleigh or way to make the A sound, or 8. It also though could be EIGH, like in oh, there has another sound. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can pull it up for us and add these in. So the I, obviously, like IGH, like I, so you can see a whole bunch of different these to practice, and giving your kids a vowel, a prompt to prompt with that, to giving them practice with cards. So they can be practicing these different vowel sounds depending on the situation. We also create yellow cards where there's more than one way of spelling that sound. And I would show them. So if they only knew this one, then that's great. I don't even need one because there's only one way of spelling that sound they know. If they know these ones, well, I'm going to show them all. If they know EIGH and they know EY, they know these others. I have these cards that I can show them all and practice them. But notice I'm putting these in commonality. The A consonant E is much more common than the AI and the AY. So I'm going to give them an auditory prompt, and your sound is A. What are the different ways you know how to spell A? And they can write it in the air, they can write it on the paper. I want them to think about the different ways of spelling that sound. Okay, oh, and the handout, for yellow cards. I do have a handout for yellow cards I'll take you to. And then I'm going to have given you a lot to chew on. So before we get into syllable division, I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk to each other about just individual syllables and that structure. Okay, so the handout, there you go. Come on. How do I do this? Okay, fine. ADA compliant handouts. That's what I was looking for, is that. This one is our keywords for yellow cards. I'll make it bigger so we can see. But you'll notice, like for example, the long A, here are all the different ways of spelling the long A. A consonant E, AI, AY, EIGH, like in sleigh, EA like in steak, EI like in vein, EY like in they. I do not give these all to my kids at the same time. That's extremely overwhelming. We start with one kind of pattern at a time and we build up. And so it makes me a little nervous when I see the programs that will give them all at once. I do know there are programs who do that and they claim it's very successful. I would love to see the evidence. For me, it depends on the kids and whether or not they can handle everything at once. Melissa, you're a private tutor. I see you looking for that on mute, whether or which approach you take, because I have known programs who teach them all at once and others it depends on the kids, I think. You're just nodding your head. You don't want to contribute. But you can see the different spellings of those different sounds. There's our vowel R's. We even have some short sounds that are spelled more than one way. So Kimberly, when you were talking like the AI and said, we don't have that here because it's so very rare. I think that's probably the only one word it will say that. So just like our consonants, we don't have the double F like an off. Actually, we don't have any doubles here. I was thinking we don't have the V, the F making the V sound because it only happens in one word, and that's an of. So we're helping our kids see what's most common, because teaching reading is really about statistics and looking at the most common patterns that will help us. Okay. Link, please. Yes. Excuse me. Because if I get to just this one, I think that I can try it. This is the whole folder. It should be of ADA compliant handouts, which is at the very top of this, this doc, which everyone has. I'll give you this one again. Copy URL. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Let me try it. Where is this one? Oh, right here it is. Copy URL, so you can have all those, and right here at the top, this handouts will take you to those that we were just looking at. Okay, I've given you a lot to chew on. I want to get into syllable division next, but that one takes a little bit of explanation and modeling. So I'm going to pause here and give you some time to talk to each other before we go into that. Because then the next opportunity to talk, how am I doing on time? Yes, the next opportunity to talk will be to actually practice and play with things too. So I'm going to pause here. I'll pause on this for us to explore. Whoops, that's teaching syllable division. I meant this one, instructional teaching syllable types, this one. All right, I'm going to pause the recording.
We were talking about resources, the lack of resources. The four of us in our group are all middle school teachers. And we're finding that we have to backtrack or try to help our students that are not, I don't want to use the wrong word, but they're not up to the levels that they should be, in coordinate and they're not on the grade levels that they should be for their literacy achievements. And so the resources just, I think it was Rebecca was saying that she didn't even know where to start because all of her resources are outdated and she's getting no support from her school. So actually the chart that I asked you about that you listed is a great starting point. And we were also talking about maybe starting a group outside of your workshops so we can all keep in touch together and collaborate and support one another. So you are vital for what you're giving us is tremendous help to help us to help the students. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And when it comes to resources, thank you, Melissa. I've made so much of this stuff. My hesitation is sharing them when they're not ADA compliant and recognizing, please don't expect these to be readable by an e-reader. But they're posters you can put on the wall. They're decoding word lists you can have your kids do. I mean, things that I had my book and I created my list, and why on earth should somebody have to reinvent the wheel again? And when I say list, let me pull one up. I see if I can find one quickly and easily. That I'll just type in the word decoding.
Well, would I ask you for the link? I mean, you gave us a wealth of resources. I have, what is 23 pages of links from all of your sessions.
Right.
And I was like, oh, great,
This
I
one's a
gotta
little
look through
smaller.
it.
The keywords for yellow cards is ADA compliant. But let me give you an example of some of the decoding I would give to my kids. Hopefully,
And they're not
yes.
always ADA. Some of them are very minor, with just not being taught to read properly, all the way up to, you said, going down that list to where they need special ed. So, the
So,
variation
yeah,
is there.
no, by ADA, I meant, so it's accessible by an e-reader. That's the ADA compliant. So these I made when I was teaching a kid. I had 6 times to meet with this kid. That's all they were going to give me. I know, Melissa. So I thought, okay, what can I accomplish in 6 times? Well, I want to at least let him know about the different syllables. So I made one of these for each syllable type. I said, here are some examples. Here's a note. And let's brainstorm your own words for these. So that's one of the things that I've done. I would have a decoding review, which you're going to get a chance to try some of these, where this is actually from when I was at Chartwell, and they would take this home, underline their vowels, divide between their syllables, and then read it to an adult and have them sign it. This was their homework. So I would have this was a review, obviously lots of different styles, but let's see if we had let's see, decoding tests, advanced doubling rule. Is that the spelling or nope, this was a decoding. So these ones had 2-syllable words, and they had to code them and then read them. Whoops, I don't know what's going on with that. Read them to an adult. And they had to think about, oh, this one, the only one consonant in between. So they had to think about those a little bit where that's why it said read them very carefully. So these are the types of things where, yes, I made a lot of those, but so did my colleagues. That's what we did because, well, special education teachers, we didn't have a curriculum. We had to make all this stuff. But we would get out the book and we would look at words that our kids knew. I mean, because these are all of these lists are a little bit too much. And so we would focus on, like, if I haven't done digraphs yet, I'm not going to include those or things like that. So yes, Charlene, there's a lot, and little by little, I mean, we take small steps so that we can really build our students' knowledge. Like I said, when I had 6 sessions with this kid, we're going to spend each session learning about a different syllable type. It's just so I could at least give him that to go forth with.
And then what happened? That's it? There was 6 sessions and he went back? Well, I mean, what happened?
This was a summer session with a kid, and I used the opportunity to train a teacher, and mom, that's all she could give us, and never heard from them again. So I don't know.
And as someone was a tutor, Dahlia, I think you are a tutor, right? Well, when I was a tutor, they gave me 20 minutes with a student with no idea of what I was going into. And I'm like, how do you expect me to help a student in 20 minutes and have no idea? So, I mean, I had to do what you did to try to do a quick assessment and just have some type of starting point. And I found that I was like you, was making it up, trying to figure out which is the best thing. And every student was different. So every student had different needs. And I'm like, where do I find something? Where is that starting ground to be able to assess these? Like I said, I was flying by the seat of my pants, and then they don't come back. Sometimes they come back, some they don't. It was random. So, I mean, what happens? That's what happens. Do they get lost in the system? What happens after you have this session, like you did with this student? Has he succeed? Did it help? Where do we go from there?
I wish I knew. That's all I would get.
Another thing I'm finding out too, through everyone in this group, and Alicia, maybe you can help on this end. And we'll just focus on Washington. Are they giving this assessments, the standardized assessments, in the beginning of the year or in the spring?
They always happen in about April, May.
So
Yeah,
by the end of this is
like
my
May time,
logic.
right?
If they're doing these assessments at the end of the year, they're not catching the deficits until the student is almost at a failing point. Why wouldn't it be more logical to do it to have some type of assessment at the beginning of the school year, so the teachers can catch and help and get the student where they need to be at the beginning, rather than putting them through this kind of stress at the end of the year where they feel it's gonna, I mean, and they go all spring stressing
Well,
out.
those are meant to be a summative of what they've learned. There's a great book that talks about the different kinds of assessments, and I'll make this recommendation and then we'll go on to syllable division. This 10 success factors for literacy intervention. They talk about the different purposes of assessments and what you're talking about, Charlene, and that's why here in Washington we have the screener law that says every K-1-2 and recommended even beyond should be screened 3 times a year. And the screener identifies who might need help. Then you do a diagnostic to see what they need help on. And then you do the progress monitoring to make sure that what you're doing is working. So
And didn't
those
you just say that it wasn't passed after for dyslexia? It wasn't, they only go through K-3, but that the legislative didn't pass it for the
So we-
upper.
so the law right now is K-2, and there was
Great.
Kimberly, thank you. They do an I-ready, I think you meant 3 times a year school-wide. So there are schools who are doing school-wide. The legal requirement is K-2. There's a recommendation in our guidelines that it be every grade. But no, I mean, there was a bill that was proposed to expand the legal requirement to grade 4. And it's not that it didn't pass, it's that they had too much on their plates to have it in our short session right now. We'll try that again next year. Okay, so one of the things I did point you to is in our Jamboard, we had some exploration. And so this is one way that you can help your kids is think of how would I combine these? So where's M for empire or stem? Admire maybe? Admire. So one way you can help your kids. Oh, vampire. So how can you be making these costume? So making your words with this way. This is another one that I made where you can take the E to give them an opportunity to practice. Is it wad to wade, met to meet, rip to write, hop to hope, etc. So was there another group who did you take a look at any of these, or did you have some other thoughts? And I say somebody's on the division. This is what we're going to do together because it's hard. So I'm going to teach about the syllable division first. As I'm going, I just want to make sure the door is open for other groups. And we're going to jump into syllable division if we're ready. I did find, and when we talked about the yellow cards, I want to share, I did find my yellow cards. They were over on the couch to show you what these would look like. So this would be the E, like an elephant and head. Here would be the long O, like in pony, sorry, pony, home, soap. And then I have OW like in toe and OE, I'm sorry, well, toe and toe, or OW like snow and OE like in toe. What I would also do is write the keywords here so that if I forgot what they were, I could just kind of take a peek and see. So these were the yellow cards that I would practice with my kids, whether it be the vowel sounds or even the consonant sounds. These are the different ways of making the N sound. And like a nest, KN like a night, GN like an sign. So that's the N sound. So you get the idea on those keywords for yellow cards. Hello, welcome back. The flow chart, yes, I will put that back in for you, Rebecca. That would be see if it's still up here. I'm going to go back to our handouts. The flow chart is here under the decision-making tree. Let me grab that link for you. Copy URL. There you go. Thank you, Melissa. Okay. All right, welcome back, Kevin. Okay, so now good timing. We're going to jump into syllable division. So I have some tips first, and then we're going to get into the practicing. Number 1, when you're helping your kids divide words and pull them apart into syllables, let's start with compound words. It's easier. Because then they're recognizing that, for example, if I have windowsill, I'm going to break apart the window and the sill. Although window is a multi-syllabic word, it was the first thing that came up to my mind. I'm trying to think of a 2-syllable word that's compound. Bookshelf is a great one. helping you recognize those 2 units. Let's do lots of writing and reading, both on both sides. Now, with the decoding, the patterns I'm going to illustrate on the other one, I've read about the spot and dot. It's okay. I don't mind it. I also, though, want to say, let's do less. Less is more. Our goal is so that our students don't have to have a lot of extra things, and that they get to the point where they, I'll do the word here, this one, they underline their vowels and they divide between their syllables. That would be the least scaffolded version. That's our goal. I mean, their goal is obviously that they could read it without looking at it. So I'll just, that they just read the word explore. But if they need to divide it into syllables to spell it, to pronounce it, you underline your vowels, you notice the O consonant E, and you divide here between the 2 syllables. However, I will illustrate then how we can do patterns to support us. This spot and dot, it's a way. So you're dotting the vowels and you are dividing between them. I like to underline them because that's where you're paying attention to them, but it's also the way I was taught. So different strategies. Again, we're fading support as possible. So let me give you an illustration of the patterns and what I mean by the different fading of that. So let me move this out of the way and I'll show on the next screen. So with the patterns, again, as I said, my goal is that my kids underline the vowels, divide between the syllables. But the first time they do this, I'll do it on the one napkin below. And this is brand new to them. They're going to underline their vowels. And I say, hold on, notice you've underlined 2 things and they're separated by 2 different consonants. So what do we have? We have 2 syllables, right? We're going to have to divide between those. And if you remember, we have on the poster on the side where, so I'm first going to divide up these, I'm going to draw a pattern line and label them. This is a vowel, this is a consonant, this is a consonant, and this is a vowel. Remember the poster we have that I don't unfortunately have on my wall anymore, but tells us that the most common division is between the 2 consonants. And I'm going to give them a whole bunch of them where the consonants are the same in the beginning, like rabbit and muffin. And you get the idea. I'd have to look it up. And then I'm going to work on some where they're different, like this in napkin. So all I have to do is underline those vowels and divide between them. And when my kids are working on this at the pocket chart, they're going to go syllable by syllable. Now, why did I underline the vowels? Because that's the hardest part for our kids. So syllable by syllable, I underline the O. That vowel sound is ah because it's a closed syllable. My first syllable is wom. My second syllable, bat. If I needed to help determine that A is an ass sound, so but then you can put them together and my word is wombat. And I'm going to do the same thing even if there's only one. I'll practice draw my pattern line. This is a vowel, this is a consonant, this is a vowel, and I divide most commonly here. Now remember I said sometimes you have to play around with it. Is 7 a word you know? Nope. So let's try, is 7 a word you know? Yes. So they have to play around with it. There are some programs that do what's called syllaboards, where if my word were wombat, I would start with my vowels, the O and the A, and then I would write my consonants around them so that they can then practice reading that word wom and bat and then put it together. Versus cabin, you have the A and the I. And is it cab in? Sure, that works. Is it cabin? Sure, that works. As long as you pronounce this as can instead of K. So this is one where you have to think about how you're pronouncing it and how you're using those. Here are some other examples of them, just helping your kids pull them apart into these different boards. Empower, here's an, oops. I didn't realize only 2 of those. But this is another tool that I've used. I love this tool. And I see that we're almost at our break time. So I'm just going to share with you this last tool. This is, again, I try to have things not expensive. This is $6 for 4 of these. There's a little plastic card that you put over what you're reading. And I think mine is right in here, or at least it used to be. and I've used it since and moved it. So it's a plastic card that you put over what you're reading, and then you can slide it. Do I divide it here between the E and the C, or do I divide it between the C and the O? And my daughter used these when she first got them and when she was younger. And it's sliding it back and forth and help her with those words that struggle. And so if I didn't have one of those, I could use something like, this is dark on one side, or I use my finger, or I'll underline the vowels for her to help her recognize that she needs to sound them out and recognize each vowel is its own syllable. So when we get back, we're going to do some practice on decoding and encoding. We're going to talk about simultaneously oral spelling, and you're going to get a chance to practice this stuff. But I'm going to give you a break first, a stretch break. We have a 15-minute between 1:45 and 2 o'clock, and then we come back. We will have our last 90 minutes together. And depending on how much because our group is getting smaller and smaller, depending on how much practice you want to do, we might get out early today. But resume recording. Welcome back. And we're going to jump into the decoding and encoding processes. So you've seen me doing some of this, at least on the decoding side. The encoding side, we haven't done as much. And I apologize for the gray text. I keep trying to fix that. So we're going to start on the left-hand side. That's the print and to speech side. And though we haven't talked a lot about prefixes and suffixes, we will talk about those more next time. When I say isolate, what we did at Chartwell is we would box, whoops, that's not a very good box. Let me try that again. We would put a box around our prefixes and our suffixes, and that way we are isolating, I should say isolate the base word or the root word, but we're boxing, by some people circle, some people underline, whatever. We're trying to get the suffixes and prefixes out so we can see what your base word is. And this is the base word that is like to affix, to glue together. So if you think of affix and to affix something, so there we have that. So that's isolating the prefixes and suffixes. Now we're going to where we have the un as a prefix, ER, we're going to underline our vowels. You see me doing that a lot. And by letter combinations with the younger kids at Chartwell, they would underline things like your digraphs and your trigraphs. We would, for our older kids, we might underline things like the TION or the SION or an ION combination that's tricky. We just teach it as a unit, it might be easier for our kids. Then we have the dividing between the syllables. So like in underline, you see me doing that. And then as I remember last time, we had the optional drawing of the pattern line between, our drawing a pattern line from the first syllable sound to the second vowel sound, sorry, and label them vowel consonant. And this is a vowel sound. And then, I can't do that because I have the TW sticks together. So that one's gonna have to be B in between. Actually, BE is a prefix. Think of behind, beneath, beside, between. So that one I should have just boxed the prefix BE and on our tween there. And then as I started to demonstrate, we were going to read those vowel sounds first. Those are the hardest parts for our kids. And we start with those vowel sounds, and then we go sound by sound for each syllable. And then we go syllable by syllable, then we add the suffixes and then prefixes. So this is the decoding side on the left. On the right, when we start encoding, we're given the word. So if the word is wombat, what's your word? Wombat. Wombat, how many syllables? However you want to practice that. Wombat, I have 2 syllables. What's the first syllable? Wom. Notice that I'm going to determine the vowel sound, that is the hardest part. And I'm going to make a note of it. The wom, my vowel is ah. It's made by O. Now I'm going to go through each sound spelling in order. My syllable was wom, and I'm going to write it the woo, ah, My second syllable was bat. The a is spelled with an A. And sound by sound, b, a. And what I don't have written here is decode to determine that you did it correctly. In this case, underlining and dividing. So my word is wombat. So we'll be trying that as well. So this is based on the Orton-Gillingham approach of simultaneous oral spelling, where you are write it, see it, say it, feel it all at the same time. And so you can see what we did in the last example. The teacher says the word. The students are going to look and listen. What was my mouth doing? that the pupils, the students are repeating that word. They're going to segment it, naming the letters as they're writing it. And they're naming the letters at the same time as they're writing it down, and lots of cursive. And then they check to see whether or not they've spelled it correctly. So that's the encoding process, which you'll have a chance to practice those together. But before I give you an opportunity to practice, we're going to do this together because this is hard. These are, when I say for you, these aren't words I gave my kids. In the Jamboard, you'll find some lists of words I gave my kids. You'll find this too, if you want to go back to it. So let's pull up the Jamboard again for us. So we are going to be looking at this list. And then I have a couple other lists that I did give my kids, and then as well as some closing activities. So 13 and 14 are things that I gave my kids. We're looking at this one, number 12. And we're going to do this together because there are some tricky ones that we want to talk about. So we have enough that everyone can do a word if you like. If you don't want to do one, then some people get a chance to do two. I think we might have enough for people to do two. So we do have enough that some people could do more than one. If you'd like, I can start us off with the first one. And it is also helpful to talk yourself through this. So in the beginning, I underline my vowels. I underline my ER, because remember, ER represents and an A, and I see an I consonant E. So now I'm going to divide between the R and the C, because I know that I can't separate that CH, because merchandise or dice, merchandise. So my first syllable is merchandise, plus my word is merchandise. And if I were a kid up at the pocket chart practicing this, if I did it correctly, then you all would reread it. And if I made some mistakes, then maybe I'd say, Gina, you didn't repeat. Can you tell me why? And she said, well, because you said merchandise, not merchandise, or whatever it might be. So good catch. Let's try it again. And so this is a way we can engage all of our students, even if you're not the one doing it, because after I've done it, you're going to need to repeat if I did it correctly. So who else would like to keep going? You can either unmute and talk it through, and I'll do the coding for you. Rebecca, I see you unmuted. Go ahead.
I could do bamboozle.
Okay.
So we've got the A right there, and then the double O, and then the E, the end.
Remember, this is a Zol.
Oh, so is that going to be the, oh gosh, is that going to be the syllable? Zol?
Yep. So where else am I going to divide though? Because I have 3 syllables.
Yeah, at MB, between the M and the B.
Yep,
Yeah.
you chose a hard one.
I was going to guess after the Z.
Bamboos.
Oh, okay. Now I can hear it. Bamboozle. Okay.
Boozle, the Zol.
Yeah.
And you know, if you did it between the Z and the L, you can bamboozle. The Z, it kind of stretches those syllable division, which is very often if we have, for example, rabbit, the B is stretching those two. I just teach the ziltable as a syllable type. Let's just keep it together. It's easier for our kids. Because otherwise I look at that and that ol is weird because you want to say, is it l? Is it le? Is it lee? It's just ol. So we just teach the zol together. You chose a hard one, Rebecca. Good job. Although we have a lot with that CI, when the TI that we need to talk about, because that's a hard one too.
I like that word though.
Bamboozle?
Pugnacious. No, pugnacious.
You want to do it together? Well, we've got the U is easy and the K. But in this case,
IOU.
we're going to ignore that I.
Really?
Do you hear an I in there?
No.
The purpose of that I is because that CI is a combination. That I is making this a sh.
Okay.
Same thing with the I. Yep.
Okay.
And the I.
So then the syllables would be between the G and the N.
Pug.
And then between the A and the C.
Nay. And shus.
Yeah.
Those are tricky. That's one of the reasons why I brought these in, is they're hard for us to think about. Who else would like to try one? Go ahead, Dahlia.
I want to go with commercial.
Okay.
So the O, underline my vowels,
Mhm.
the O, and then the ER,
Mm-hmm.
and then not the I because it's the same as the one we just saw, and then the A, the
Mhm.
end, the commercial, and you go COM,
Mhm.
and then MER, MER,
Mhm.
and then show.
Exactly. And if my kids were older, I might talk to them about the fact that your base word is commerce. And we remember we had that commerce, that silent E we're going to drop off when we add the IAL. And that IAL is a pretty, AL is really the suffix, like dental, or, but you'll see that very often I might have to add that I. So again, I do in pugnacious and commercial and judicial, and that I and needs to be supported in those Latin-based connections. Thanks, Dahlia. Thank you, Kaylin. Someone else wants to try one.
I can do marshmallow.
Okay.
So the AR
Mm-hmm.
and the A,
Exactly.
and then the O, W, right?
Yes. Excellent.
Okay, so then Mar, so MAR. Well,
Good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mar,
It could be a mar schmal. Schmal is kind of hard to say though, isn't it?
yeah. So is it? Because when you talk, you're like marsh. Well, I guess you
Marsh.
do the marsh in there,
Mhm.
and then the marshmallow, the two L's divide, and then low.
Excellent job, Kimberly. Who wants to do the next one? It's fun. Gina, are you reaching for the unmute?
I will. I'll do it. Okay, so the I,
Mm-hmm.
the O, and the double O,
Uh-huh.
and then divide after the N and the
Mhm.
M. Nincompoop.
Excellent. You've stuck it together. Who wants to do the next one? You can too if you want, Gina.
Sure, I'll do it. Underline the I
Mm-hmm.
and the U and divide between the M's. Immune.
So notice with the I linked the I, so I'm going to do the same thing here with the U so that my kids don't forget that the E is part of that team. I
Okay.
noticed how you didn't underline it because we don't hear it. I like my kids to recognize that that U consonant E is a team that works together. But otherwise, exactly. All right, scrumptious. Who wants to go
I
ahead?
can try
You
scrumptious.
are Maggie.
Underline the U
Mm-hmm.
and the OU.
There you go.
And then I think we want to keep the together. It's a blend.
Scrumptious.
Scrumptious.
Nope, I kind of, yeah.
You would because just feels weird to me.
Scrumptious. Yeah.
Scrumptious.
Scrumptious.
thought.
Reads again, how does that feel? It's scrumptious because the is, it's really the in holding, like, think if like pumpkin, that if we slow it down, we can hear that difference between the and the p. But very often, how many kids miss either one of those because the and the p are made the same way in the mouth. The is just stretching it and the p is popping it. So those are hard with like scrumptious and pumpkin. Those are hard with those. Excellent job, Maggie. Do you want another one?
Sure. I guess we'll do strengthen. Is N a suffix?
It is. Think of darken, lighten, strengthen.
So like to make something more of kind of, okay. So then, yeah, box that and then strength, underline the E.
Excellent. It's a single
There you
syllable
go.
word with a suffix, isn't it? That's your
Yeah.
easiest way to do that. If my kids don't know that EN is a suffix, I could simply underline my two vowels, but then there's the question, is it strength, strengthen? Whatever you can get them to help sound it out to get them to strengthen. I would prefer to wait until they know until they know suffixes and recognize that that's EN, because that's an easier one. All right, we have a few more. Some people who haven't gone yet. Jana, would you like one? You're muted.
Can I do the next one?
I'll
Sure.
give it a try. Oh, do you want
go
to
ahead.
take it? Take it.
No, no, go ahead, go ahead. I didn't know if you were there.
Well, the A for A,
Mhm,
and then the A again,
mhm.
and then we have the shun at the end.
Ah, so you want to just treat it as unit. That works. We could have done that with shus and shul as well.
So then abstract and then shun.
We've underlined 3 things, so what do we need to do?
Have 3 different parts.
Mm-hmm. So
Okay, between the A, the B, and the S.
ab. Mm-hmm. Next syllable.
And then the shun. So between the, yeah, right there. Seeing this one.
Abstraction. The easiest way to pronounce it. Good job. All right. Anybody want to take on? We've got 4 more. Anybody who's not showing a video want to join in?
Okay, I'll crash and burn with the big one.
Okay, you're gonna take the big one. Go ahead, Charlene.
Okay, which is actually an instrumentation to photograph the sun. Spectroheliograph.
Okay, if I couldn't pronounce that.
SPE,
Mhm,
SPEC, the line between C and T. Tro, TRO, long O. He, HE,
mhm.
line between E and L. Leo, LIO. So it's a double vowel there. Leo,
I'm hearing
Lee,
Leo. I'm hearing Leo. We don't have an IO combination.
IO, right? And
Tell me
then
if
a
I
line
between
between the O and the G, and graph is the last one.
So do we hear them all? Spectroheliograph.
Graph. And that O is actually pronounced as an A.
Or it's kind of a schwa, it's a spectroheliograph. It's a
Heliograph.
Mhm,
It's not a long O, it's a short one.
mhm. But it's
I mean, flipped one. It's a weird one.
We can call that a weak syllable. Excellent job. We have 3 more. So Cindy, I think I saw you on mute.
Yeah, I can try dentistry.
Okay.
So we'd underline the E and the
Mhm,
I and the Y
mhm.
and divide between the N and the T
Oops, sorry.
and the S and the T.
So we have den, you get the idea. Tis tree. Excellent job. That's a hard one if you recognize that your base word is dentist, because we don't think of RY as a suffix. We think, Y is a suffix here, but we need to put this R in there and we can blame the Latin. All right, we have 2 more. Do we have Kevin, Addie, Travis, Courtney? I think Caitlin had to step out. Oh, maybe not. Yes, she had to step out. Addie? If not, I'll open it up to someone who's already done one. No worries, Addie. She's not available. Cindy, since you were the most recent, would you like to take one of those other 2?
Sure, I'll do smudge.
Mhm.
We're gonna underline the U and the E. And that is just 1 syllable.
So am I underlining the E then?
Ah, you're right, because DGE makes its own sound.
So if my younger kids, I might underline this as a unit, or my older kids, they're just underlining the U, because that DGE, you're right, represents smudge, only one thing.
Perfect.
All right, we have one last one. A little bit hard here. Let me get my tool again. Anyone want to take it? Go ahead,
I can
Maggie.
take it. Underline the U, and then the first I, and then the A, and then it'll be Jew, dish. Oh, that's what I would say.
Yeah, is that the hard one with that CI? And also recognizing that your base word is judge. So you had DGE in your base word, became a C when it became judicial. And that's a fascinating piece as well. All right, you guys did a lot of hard work. Time for you to have some fun. I'm going to clear all that off. We're going to give you some breakout. We did some of those already. So we're going to just do the decoding practice on frames 12 and 14. But you can, I already did the making words. We already talked about some of those. But you can take a look and explore. I also want you to choose a word to practice encoding with someone. So practice where you're giving them the word, and then as the student, you're dividing the words and going through that encoding practice process that I talked about here. We've got the decoding is what we've been doing together. The encoding is where you give them a word, you're not seeing it, and then you're going from that process of trying to spell it if you're not as familiar with it and going syllable by syllable. So I do see a request to get the Jamboard again. Let me do that for you. And then I'll open up the breakout rooms for you to practice. And then we'll have some little bit more practice times, and we'll be closing up by 3:30. Jamboard, that's what I'm doing here. Give me a second. Share. And everyone is an editor. Okay. We might have had people step out and leave for the breakout room. I'm going to hit pause the Zoom recording. So taking a look at this slide, it looks like we're still working on them, and that's fine. We can work on it together. I love how the T, I assume that was Travis, because I think that's our only T. Hi, Travis. I love how you did not underline the U or the E in sequence. You are completely correct. Sequence. I would say that the I, though, in servile is a part of that team. Remember that I consonant E team. So I'm going to hook
Oh,
that.
that was my fault. He didn't have it originally underlined, and I told him he had to.
I was forced, bent against my will.
So it's not by itself. It's part of that team, though. Remember, I'm showing that unit that the I consonant E, the E is affecting, if you want to call it a bossy E or an E controlled or an I consonant E, that E has a role that it's playing. And then question with this one, is this just the I or the OI?
So, so that is, hi there. That is, guess we went both on that one.
And they're going to be together, though, not separate, right? Because it's not I or I, it's oi, like in oil or spoil. So checking on that, I couldn't quite tell. Good job. And we've got portrait. There's that AI not making an A, but an E. So that's like in said. So there's one you can help with, whoever was asking about earlier about sight words with the AI. Harpoon, oatmeal, misplay. You could either do it that way, or you could create this as a prefix, either one. Same thing with rebound, and unveil. Nice. So we've got the EI making the ale. It's very weird. Disfavor, excellent. Just as a reminder, we'll do the OR together and those. Deathly, we can either do it the EA there, or we can also do it, this is a suffix. Same thing with speedy, either one. Brightest, that's one way, or you could do the EST as a suffix on your base word as bright. Either one would work. Usable is a hard one. Now I've got someone started that with the U and the A and then the BLE. You could do it this way, or usable. Or this one is a suffix. Let me get all that out. And next time we'll be talking about, we'll do it anyway for us, the fact that your base word was use, and we had a silent E under there. So we dropped the E when we added the ABLE. So this is what I would teach my kids to code, is underline the U consonant E that we had. So we recognize that if we took off the ABLE, we'd have to put the E back on there. Thank you, Travis. And we have another suffix here, and we have our A consonant E in same. Sometimes it's easier when you do it this way. Any other questions with these, even though they weren't all encoded? Everybody feel good? Got some practice? I'll open it for. I'm listening. I think I hear someone unmuted.
Oh, that's me. Sorry.
That's okay. If there's something you wanted to comment about.
No, I was just popping my gum.
Just wondering how that felt. Did we have a conversation and about them? Anything else that would be weird that you'd want to check on? I just
We
wanted you
were,
to get
we
this-
were, yeah, we
Go
were
ahead.
talking about portrait, the word portrait, because that one was it wasn't confusing per se, but it was an interesting one because we don't say 8, we say portrait. So we
Mhm.
kind of weren't sure if they would both be underlined, if it would just be the I, but because they were
Mhm.
together, we just underlined them both because it
That's a
was
really great
like,
point because you're right. That
Yeah.
is tricky because if it weren't for the poor, if I said you have traits of your parents, it is a long A.
mhm.
But when you stick the poor on it, because the poor is the strong syllable that gets the accent, it becomes, instead of portrait, it becomes portrait. It's that schwallowed. Mhm. And that's again where we help kids recognize the flexibleness, the flexing that we need to do with our vowel sounds, because especially if they're not the strong syllables, it's going to be a little bit weird and a little bit different. Just gonna see if there are any here that are weird that we want to draw attention. There's our U and useful, like we had usable. There's a Y in the middle of a word, but it really is flamboyant. It is the end of a syllable, so hence you can have the Y instead of an I there. And because remember, we don't have two I's next to each other, so we have a suffix ing, your base word sway. Any other weird ones? There's the AI making a clearer A, like in pain and painless.
Blameable.
Which one?
Blameable. Blameable.
Blameable.
Third,
So if I didn't know, I could
because it would say flammable.
So I would do here, blame. Maybe this should be an or if I knew that this was a suffix, I would box my ABLE and recognize that my base word was an A consonant E, and I dropped the E when I added the ABLE. Does that make sense, Charlene?
Yes.
Just like here, useful. Now, because my suffix starts with a consonant, I can leave the E, but because my suffix starts with a vowel, I have to drop it. Those are things we'll talk about next month when we get into morphology. So Charlene says schwa. Yes, that schwa is difficult. People have asked me, was they were creamy, or do I divide? Well, if you don't know that Y is a suffix, you could either go creamy or creamy. It really doesn't matter because both ways will get you to the correct pronunciation of creamy. And then, of course, hopefully before too long, we'll help kids recognize that your base word is cream, and you've added that suffix Y to make it a creamy texture that you use cream for. Okay, I'm just taking a quick look to see if there are any other weird ones we need to talk about. Pleasant has that int, which is a little weird. All right. How'd it feel? Good practice for you with your kids. Here's some other opportunities we can do with practice. I know I mentioned this earlier. Remember that they didn't take a paper plate, but you could take a paper plate and a brad. And notice how that BLE can be moved around. Bull, toll, full, cull, tremble, fable, bumble. And then these cards are kind of like with the Jamboard where you can move the E around. This you're going from fin to fine and snip to snipe. I once saw someone do some really fancy folding. And they took the word no, and then they made it not, and then they made it note. And I don't remember that fancy folding, but it was pretty fancy. But you could do this with pocket chart, with letters, and have your kids start with that open syllable no, add on the T, make it not, add on the E, make it note, helping your kids. Practicing with these in so many different ways. Let's, flashcards, let's conversation, let's talk about them, let's read them, let's write them, these individual codes. Oh, I had some more decoding reviews. I think we did these in the Jamboard already, didn't we? We did all of those. And we did these, so we're not going to do those. I do have some word sorts that I wanted to start recognizing and looking at. But I know that people we just came out of a break room, so rather than go into a breakout room again, we'll talk about them and I'll bring them up and we'll talk about them in whole group. And then we'll have one last breakout room at the end when we talk about recommendations and things that we want to kind of take with us. So on the word sorts, these are some word sorts that I've either found or created, and how, like, a way that you can help your kids see these different syllables. So I heard someone saying that they teach middle school, high school. When I did my dissertation with high schoolers, and I did the first 6 weeks, we talked about the 6 syllable types. The second 6 weeks, we talked about the 3 rules that how we change words when we add suffixes. So the dropping the E one we just did, the double drop and change. And then the last 6 weeks, we focused on Greek and Latin roots, because those are such building blocks in our reading. And for each time, we would start with a sort. And one of the things I want to really emphasize if you're going to do sorts is that these cannot be silent activities. A sort kids should never be silently sorting. The first step when you do a sort is a lay and say. And I don't think I have it in this slide deck, but I do have the steps spelled out if you are interested. But the first step is to lay them out. You take your deck of sorted words, your cards, you pull them out, you lay them out in front of you, you lay them and say them. And then I do have stable word sorts. I know I put a folder of them. Okay, the first step is you lay them and say them, because as you're saying them, you're then thinking about the connection between the sound and the symbol. The second step is to sort them into categories. So as a teacher, hopefully we've said how many categories. So maybe it's 2 categories if you have 2 syllable types, 3 categories, however many. You tell them how many categories they're going to be sorting into, and then they start looking at the patterns and why things would fall into one category or the other. After they've done this sorting, we'll talk about it as a whole group. What did you see? What are the patterns? Let's then extrapolate the rule from this pattern, because, for example, all of these are making a short A sound, or all of these are making that short I. We are all working in closed syllables. These ones are, so we're looking at what kinds of patterns we're looking at. And so I've done some that are closed versus vowel consonant E. You can do closed versus open, etc. Are controlled, so you can do the different kinds of spellings. Closed versus vowel team, different spellings of the same sound, multisyllabic words with similar syllable types. And I'm going to pull up some of these examples for you to see, and I will also share them with you. So give me a minute and I'll get there. But the question for you is, are there sorts that you've done, and do you see other opportunities to be using sorts to support our kids as they are doing this exploration and practice?
I've done like spell sorts. So same idea, but instead of giving them the words, you give them the categories and then you dictate words and they have to figure out what category to go into.
Oh, I like that. That sounds a little bit extra harder, Maggie.
It's tricky. Yeah, I learned that from the Wired for Reading people too. And they would do it with like nonsense words too. So then sometimes you'd also have to some things could follow in different categories because they're nonsense words. And so the kids would have to know when to ask for a lifeline, and it's tricky, really tricky.
I love that. That's awesome. And that's harder. I'm thinking something even just as simple as this, where I have, you notice, mad, made, hid, hide, fin, fine. I think I made that Jamboard thing off of this. So the kids are just sorting and seeing how these are different, and they're seeing those. I had another one here. Here are the vowel teams. These are the syllables that I was showing you, and I have them all in a folder that you can have access to, where we went through each of those syllable types. This was like what I made for that 1 6-year-old. I mean, that kid I had only for 6 opportunities. This would be a short N vowel that I created. Looking at these, look at these: stone versus take, bride. So we have some of these at the top are that silent E because of the I vowel consonant E. We have the French end E, and we have then the puree, touche, but then we have epitome, sesame, catastrophe, Calliope, Penelope, Phoebe, passe, and then we have another I consonant E. So different ways that you can help kids see the patterns. Another favorite I've done is with a CH. The CH making the, and I don't have that at my fingertips, but I can annotate for you. The CH making the ch sound, like in chair and chin, and help me with some more CH making ch, like in
Cheese.
what was that?
Cheese.
A
Cheese.
cheese. Cheese. So a bunch of the CH making that sound, but then you can have others where you're sorting the CH making the sh sound, like in machine, or chaparral, or shishi, or machine's my favorite one, the easiest one. You can have a whole bunch of those, and like the chaparral. I don't know how to spell that too. Chaparral. You get the idea. Oh, chef. And then we have another category where the CH is making the the k, like in choir. And school and chameleon. And I ask my students then, okay, we've sorted these. Now, can you help me understand why would I spell or what's the pronunciation? Let's look at, they're all CH. Why would it be the ch versus the sh versus the k? Look at the kinds of words we use in each of those groupings. And think about the language origin. Remember the etymology handout that I started to give you. Maggie, you've been with me before, haven't you? Blame the French. So which one do you blame the French? One of those categories is French. The second one, exactly. Let me get my pencil here. This is the French category. So what about the other two? What are the language origin of those two? Anglo-Saxon here, the Old English words, Anglo-Saxon. And then lastly, she's got it, are the Greek. So different things you can do for those categories. And ways to be using sorts. So I'm going to grab this whole link for you and put in the chat box. You can explore some of these as well as others that I put in there. Clear all those drawings and oops. Let me put out 4 of these handouts for you. I think, let's see. We'll try this and see if this works for you. Okay, so that's going into the etymology, how you can help your students understand the history and understand why we spell things. And when you say blame the French, one of my favorite resources on those is Erica Ockrent. Here she is, has a YouTube channel where you can learn so much about why things are spelled the way they do. And this is where we get into the etymology, is the history. And she actually has a book called Highly Irregular, Why Tough, Through, and Do Don't Rhyme, and Other Oddities of the English Language. And it has a chapter, Maggie, called Blame the French. It has a chapter called Blame the Greeks, Blame the not the Russians, Latin by the Romans. And then she also talks about Blame Ourselves, how language change. And so these are a lot of fun videos that you can watch to be exploring that etymology and understanding the history on these words, and why we have the silent letters and how to make those connections. So this is one of, unfortunately, I can't hold up this book because I lent it to someone and haven't gotten it back yet. So that's okay. All right, so we've talked a lot about the different kinds of syllables. I want us to go back to our paragraph and notice those syllable types. Let's label them. I've highlighted the different kinds of syllables, one of each. Let's take a moment and look at them together. Let's label the different kinds and think about how we could access this more easily now that we have that knowledge. No one's going to do this for me. Come on. Let's work together on it then. First one. I'll label it, you tell me.
Be
which one.
the E, the silent E.
Vowel consonant E, thank you.
You're welcome.
And be careful with silent E because there are other reasons for silent E. In fact, I'm gonna pause this for us a second. If we go back to our resources, I think there's many reasons for silent E doc that I love. Let's see if it's in here. Yep, the many jobs of silent E, where they'll talk about, let's see, there's a PDF. Hopefully this will work out. Yep, there's the first one. Number one is one we're talking about. Makes a vowel sound long. Well, we've talked about the soft C and soft G. That EI, that I, U, and V, we can keep it from being the last letter in the word. We can show that it's not a plural. We can add vowel to syllables within the consonant LE. So like bundle and puzzle. And makes it TH say its name. And then, of course, it clarifies the meaning for the word. So I'll put that in the chat box for you. Okay. So that was the vowel consonant E or vowel bossy E, whatever you want to call that one. Let's go back to here. All right, keep us going.
Ripping would be a closed vowel, right?
One closed here in rip, yep, plus a suffix ing. And when your kids say, well, wait a minute, I've got a suffix, that's when next time we're going to talk about why we doubled that P, because it's a 111 word that and we're starting with a vowel suffix. So rip is your base word there. And up, you're right, there we have a closed. How about this one, the pull?
The LE.
Consonant LE.
Open.
Thank you, Kimberly. Keep us going.
The R.
Vowel R. This is becoming easy for you all, right? Takes a lot longer for our kids. And one last one. Oh, but we see it here too.
Double vowel.
Our vowel team. Exactly. Vowel digraph, vowel team. I think if we're going to use the word consonant digraph, why don't we also say vowel digraph? That might be easier for our kids. Not as many of those. I see an A consonant E here in scare. We have a closed and slop and slopped there. A closed, but we only have a couple of vowel teams in this paragraph.
Is IGH a vowel digraph too, or a trigraph?
It is. I just
So
don't
nice.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. I missed that one. Thanks, Maggie. All right. So when we look at how this looks in a comprehensive lesson, let me clear all that off. This is what we would do at Chartwell. We were, like I said, a Slingerland, but we would focus here on the encoding, how we spell things. And really the spelling is when we're adding affixes. But we would use, I'm going to try to write in my, you get the idea. That's an ES. Here in our decoding is where we would practice like we were doing on the board and the decoding pages we gave you. And we would also do our multisyllabic and our encoding, going, remember, from print to speech and from speech to print. And I always gave my students supports. So this is one of my colleagues, my mentor's classroom. And you notice we have our prefixes over here, and she has her suffixes over on this side of the room because we always start with the prefixes and end with the suffixes. But notice how we have our vowel R's together here. These are all vowel R's. She added the YR because her name is Myrna. We have our long O's, long U, long U, the aw, the O, the oi, and we have the and the I here. She has a couple of red flag words, some weird ones, your digraphs and trigraphs, and again, our other vowel sounds. So she's mixed in your long open syllables with her vowel consonant E's and then her vowel teams because she's displaying them by sound, which a lot of people do. When I would teach them, though, I would teach them just the vowel consonant E's together because that's all we had done. So this is someone who's taught everything and she's keeping it up for all of her different grade levels. I would teach them, I would just do these if that's all I knew, and then I would keep these separate. And then after I've taught a few of them, then I might rearrange them to put it by order of sound rather than the kind of syllables they are. But you can see then she has her divided syllable division between the consonants, before the consonant, after the consonant, between the vowels, as well as the rules that I've been referring to, the double, drop, and change. All right, so let's see this in action. I think that we have much longer here than we have time for, or want to take the time for, because you guys have done a lot. So I'm going to start this at about 5:42, where she's decoding multisyllabic words. So let me make sure I'm still sharing with sound. I am, and I'm going to pause the recording for it. Recording so that we can see the direction. We will be taking 5 minutes of exploration time, because I don't, like I said, you can explore on your own, but sometimes it's nice to have someone to talk to about these. So we'll give you a private exploration time, and then we'll come back together and talk about what we saw and explored. I have a couple more points and supports, and we will be getting out early today. So I'll pause that here on these last pieces. My apologies that you're not getting all the words exploration, but I don't want to repeat myself for the people who are here. But just adding on a few things that you can always pause on the recording and take some exploration on, as well as this one. So this is where we are to see if you want to just do this whole group, or if you want to go into one last, I see a lot of people saying they need to leave early, one last breakout room to have a more in-depth conversation where people will be sharing, or if you want to just put something into the chat box or the Jamboard. And while you are inputting your preference, I will go and take a look at our Jamboard and see if and we're going to revisit those questions and make sure we address them all. And thank you, Charlene. That's syllabification is a complicated piece. So let me take us to our Jamboard. This is an opportunity, if you'd like, you can add in your growth, something that you have learned or that was confirmed on frame 16. We actually don't have 18, so I'm going to go up to our. I don't see anything on our parking lot, but let's go back to our questions. How many syllable types are there, everyone? We got that, right? We definitely hit that one. And how do we know which one is which? I think we spent a lot of time. I think that through those exercises, everyone got comfortable with that. I feel like we've addressed orthography. In terms of handwriting, you all know that it's important that I stress it a lot. I think that's a question really for the group and what people are doing in your schools, whether you're teaching cursive or not, what you're doing in terms of handwriting. So if you'd like to contribute to this for the collective, I think that would be really, everyone would be appreciative of that. Unless you'd like to unmute and have a conversation about it, we could do that as well. And nobody has pitched in whether you want to do this last activity whole group or in small groups. So I won't make you go in breakout rooms because I don't even know whether or not you're talking to each other. Whole group seems fine. Okay. Thank you, Cindy. We appreciate the resources. I will put my contact information back up as well as all the links. And I'd love to hear from people before you leave, whether it be in writing or orally, on something that you are taking with you, something that was learned or confirmed. Kimberly, is it too much to pick just one thing?
Yeah, I kind of think today I learned a lot about a lot of things. So it kind of is. So I appreciate all that you gave me today. I have a lot to look at and use.
Thank you, Kimberly. One little step at a time. I know there's a lot, but we break it down for our kids into one thing at a time. So thank you for that. Addie has added in about the complexity of our English language, and our students with dyslexia really need us to break it down for them. Some of our kids pick this up really easily. Some of our kids really need it broken down and really made into small pieces that can then be added. Thank you, Maggie. Yes, little by little, what might be useful for your kids. Thank you, Gina. I appreciate that. I'll go back to our Jamboard in case anybody would like to add. There are also Oh, I love how it says my kid's class does cursive in 3rd grade and then I don't see it again. I actually brought these wall cards that you see behind us with cursive and printing to a district, and she said, it has cursive. I can't show that to my kids. They don't know how to do this. This was middle school. So we need to talk. Yes, we have a lot more work to do, don't we? But not a lot of time is taken on it, and yet it's such a crucial skill. I can't tell you how often I still read articles about how we learn more through cursive, we learn more through handwriting, writing with our hands instead of instead of typing. I'll go back to this one. Oh, thank you. I'll bring it up for us to the front. And we do have, thank you for the refresher. It's great for some resources. It is, we'll close out at 3:20, 10 minutes early. And I will stick around if anybody has any questions or things that they would like to talk about. And I will put my contact information back up there. So I'm going to stop the recording.